It was a great joy to see that the championship was going to happen in Africa.
Les gens étaient heureux comme tout.
People were so happy. At last, the world was paying attention to our continent. Yes, we knew Muhammad Ali as a boxer, but more importantly, for his political stance. When we saw that America was at war in a third world country, Vietnam, and that one of the children of the United States said, "Me? You want me to go and fight against the Viet Cong? Why should I fight against them? They haven't done anything against me." And for us, it was extraordinary to see that in the America of that time, someone could take such a position. He may have lost his title, he may have lost millions of dollars, but that's where he gained the esteem of millions of Africans.
Quelle est la population des Haïtiens? 22 million.
22 million?
22 million.
How many George Foreman fans here?
Combien est-ce qu'il y a de fanatiques de George Foreman?
How many Muhammad Ali?
There are so many of them, we cannot count them.
George Foreman? We didn't know who he was. We had heard that there was a world champion. We thought he was white. Then we realized he was black, like Muhammad Ali. But still, for us, Foreman represented America. He arrived with a dog, a German Shepherd, which immediately offended Africans since the Belgians had used Shepherd as police dogs.
Ali Shepherd, the hometown fighter, and you're the out-of-towner here.
Africa is the cradle of civilization. Everybody home is Africa.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, July 23, 2020. So I have been told this is our second study session on Romain Gary's White Dog. We only got into the first couple of chapters last week, so looking forward to hopping right back into it this week. The audio segment that we started off with, that is from the documentary film When We Were Kings. It came out in 1996, but it is about right at the beginning of the 1970s, the famous professional boxing bout between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, where Muhammad Ali defeated Foreman to recapture his heavyweight championship. This is after he had been stripped of his title in the Vietnam, and they never called me nigger and all that. But the interesting thing, you heard the portion, and they show, if you watch the documentary, you'll see George Foreman when he is arriving in Zaire, and he's descending the plane, and he's got White Dog with him, and he's barking, and he looks exactly like the dog that we're talking. It's a German Shepherd. He looks exactly like the dog that we're talking about in this book, and you heard them say that's the exact type of dog race soldiers, Germans, used to control us here on the continent. White people, slave masters worldwide, they share their. You see, you get the dog, and you train him to bite the nigger and keep him under control, and you keep him, bite him down. Worldwide, white people training hounds to control and attack black people. Worldwide, white people using hounds to control and terrorize black people. And for decades, apparently. We will get started. Suspected racist Romain Gary, not a suspect after you hear the rest of this week, but whatever. Romain Gary's White Dog, audio segment number 1 on the context of white supremacy. It's 6 p.m. and they're all gone at last. Me is meowing for attention. This sweet Siamese beauty, who always keeps me company, settles on my shoulder and talks to me in her squawky, multitonal voice, sharing with me the latest news and secrets of the cat world, of tasty birds and lizards, and of all kinds of strange goings-on at night, a rich folklore full of green eyes and whiskers and dark courtships and moonlit lovers. A whole cat philosophy passes me by because of my shameful ignorance of foreign languages, a true philological disaster. Seberg comes back and hangs rather guiltily around me. I remain stony-faced and display such extreme courtesy and good manners, such civilized behavior, that she begins to cry, and I turn almost Lutheran with remorse. But then put yourself in my place. How can she worry about 20 million black Americans when she's got me? That should solve all her problems. The doorbell rings, and there are 2 kids outside, a boy and a girl, 7 or 8 years old. They are adorable, with that fairy tale blonde look of American children who always take me back where I really belong, on the threshold of the "and they lived happily ever after" world. "Excuse us, sir. Is Fido here?" "No, Fido isn't here." I make a rush to the refrigerator and come back with some juicy brownies. My diet forbids me these delights, but I always keep some in the house to satisfy at least my visual craving. "No, thank you, sir." Great. I stuff a brownie in my mouth. The children stare at me with the kind of 5 years hard labor and no parole expression children are apt to assume. "He's lying," the baby doll says. "Mister, the SPCA says Fido is at your house all right." I begin to realize who Fido is and give the kids one of those big, friendly grins that would make the wolf in Red Riding Hood turn pale with envy. It's then that I notice the Chevrolet, and the man who finishes parking it in front of my house gets out and walks towards me. Old, wrinkled, tall, thin, and all dried up in that healthy and preserved fruity way evocative of a lifetime of sunshine. His salt and pepper hair and pleasantly rugged face remind me of the grandfather we used to see 40 years ago leaping over a fence in those ads for Crushing Salt's Eternal Spring, Keep Your Blood Pure. I am delighted to see the old boy is still alive and full of beans. He walks across the lawn in that lazy, lanky American way which is always missing in those spaghetti westerns. I like him immediately for sheer physical distinction. You can't beat those Americans. They seem to have been invented by horses. A good 70 years old, you can almost count the seasons in the lines of his open, cheerful face. It speaks to you of a happy life, of retirement with a good pension and some good savings, the Blue Cross and all the mortgages paid, of fishing and duck shooting, all of it in a red checkered Pendleton shirt. The relaxed, benevolent presence of that guy speaks of a civilization that reached its peak 40 years ago and has solved almost all its social problems except those you can live with comfortably as long as you can afford to ignore them. He comes between the 2 kids, puts his arms around their shoulders. "Good afternoon, sir." I love that southern accent, with its echo of leisurely ways, of fields and white-columned mansions, of rocking chairs, porches, slow rivers, and ponies on the lawn. "They told us at the SPCA you took in a dog 3 weeks ago that may well be ours. A German Shepherd, a mole on his muzzle, and some funny rusty hair around the nose. Our trailer burned out in Gardena while we were out, and the dog panicked and got away, and we had to move on. So, Fido is his name, the little boy says. I hear footsteps behind me. My wife. I hope she will keep out of this. Seberg is a very poor liar. Won't you come in? They come in. Those damn kids don't take their eyes off me. Instinct. They smell a rat. I give them a nice, warm smile, simply bursting with goodwill and honesty. I have been expecting this encounter, and I am ready for it. As a matter of fact, I am enjoying every moment of it. I can feel the villain within me rubbing his hands gleefully. Your dog had a collar, of course. Crucian Salts shakes his head. No, the dog had put on weight, and the kids took the collar off. It was choking him. We were just going to fix him up with another one when this happened. I raise my hand reassuringly. Never mind. I'm sure it's your dog, all right. It's all there. The mole and those funny tobacco-colored hairs. One of those cigarette fiends. Ha 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 ha. The blonde angel's face lit up. That's Fido. Sure thing, the boy says. I give out a deep sigh and shake my head sadly. I am terribly sorry. I don't have the dog anymore. I called the SPCA and even put an ad in the Examiner. Nobody showed up, and I couldn't keep the dog here. There were some problems that came up. I clear my throat meaningfully, but Crucian Salts is not interested. We were on vacation here, he says. My son and wife came to Los Angeles to see if they liked it here and then to look for a house. He went back to Alabama to settle things before moving here for keeps. Nice place, Alabama, say I in a dreamy way. Been there a couple times myself. Loved it. Great. Granddad Crucian's bright smile could light up the room. The greatest, he says. But then, California isn't bad either, I say. He nods. Sure, and there's more opportunities here. My son's just retired from the police after 20 years. He plans to go into business for himself. He wants to open a kennel. He's a professional dog trainer. Police dogs. Yes, he was in the state police. I used to be a sheriff myself. I give him a friendly wink. I feel I'm giving a truly fine performance. Runs in the family, huh? Yes. My own dad was deputy sheriff, and he'll be showing me those snapshots in a second. Seberg's very sharp voice rises behind me. If you give them back the dog, I'll leave you, she says in French. My smile grows wider. Keep your mouth shut, I tell her with an exquisitely polite je joue à con. I'm playing dumb. Crucian Salts is delighted. You are French? Yes, I was born in Verdun, which is what they called the miracle of the Marne. I was in France in 1917, he says. Volunteered. The trenches. Madelon. Marshal Folk. It doesn't make me any younger. He doesn't miss a cliché, the old schmuck, says Jean, who had picked up some Yiddish when playing Joan of Arc for Otto Preminger. I don't have the dog any more. Terribly sorry. I give him again one of those searching looks full of things that are better left unsaid. A remarkably trained dog, I murmur. You certainly did a great job on him. The sarcasm is way off the mark. I expect him to behave like one of those cliché Southern heavies in the movies. But the fact is that I am dealing with a completely honest, decent, and straightforward person. And that is exactly what makes the whole thing so horrible. If only he could be a villain, I would feel a lot better. But the impression of American niceness, even goodness, the son of a bitch radiates, leaves us no alibi, no excuse. His conscience is clear, his eyes unflinching. Any accusation of wrongdoing, of guilt, of an act against humanity in the training of that dog to attack black men and black men alone would appear to him as sheer lunacy, the sick ravings of a distorted mind. Here is a perfectly honorable man, and all my barbs not only fly past him unnoticed, but they come back and make me feel like a neurotic intellectual confronted with a picture of the quiet moral strength and self-assurance that have built the world. Yes, sir. He's a fine police dog, he says, as good as they come. My boy trained him. He's been training them for 20 years of his life. He's a real professional. That's why he's moving out here to L.A. There's a lot of crime here, so there's got to be a market for good watchdogs. My boy's always liked animals ever since he was a kid. Raccoons, snakes, everything that came his way. Fido has 3 generations of attack dogs behind him, all in the police canine corps, all trained by my boy. When they get past 8, the dogs are retired. They're put up for sale. They're much in demand. My son got that one when he was 7. The best dog he's ever trained, he says. With a dog like that in the house, you've got nothing to worry about. To parler, Charles? You bet, my pet, says Seberg in sudden reminiscence of a famous line of her dialogue with Belmondo in Breathless. I film him in. Please excuse my French wife. She doesn't speak a word of English. She asks if you would care for a drink. Et avec tes oreilles, tu ne fais rien, Seberg growls. And with your ears, you do nothing? This is a key phrase in our relationship. I owe it to the actor Mario David. I ran into him one day at the Madrid airport in the cafeteria where he was having dinner. I rushed toward him, overflowing with friendship, upset his bottle of wine, tried to catch it, broke a glass, stepped on the waiter's foot, and, losing my balance, hit Mario in the eye with my elbow. I was apologizing profusely. A gold crown from my bridge came loose and fell into Mario's soup. Mario looked at me with cold interest and asked, "And with your ears, Romain, you do nothing?" "You have given the dog away?" Crucian Salts asks. "Yes. You see, as nobody claimed it. And it so happened that one of our friends took a great liking for the dog." "Do you have his address?" I shuffle my feet. "Look," I plead, "I want you to think it over. Your dog and my friend seem to have some kind of instinctive affinity for each other, something almost animal. You see, my friend is an African. Yes, a Negro." Crucian Salts freezes. His Adam's apple bobs up and down, and he swallows hard, his lower jaw sagging below and beyond the call of gravity, and his gaping mouth displays a fine, brand-new set of dentures as he stares at me with that blank expression of people who see their quiet world blown to pieces. There are moments in the life of a couple when their long years together show their mark in an unexpected way. One of the two suddenly begins to speak the language of the other. The words that blossom on my wife's lovely lips come straight from the Foreign Legion and from the red light district of Morocco, where I picked them up in the days of my adventurous youth. He ben mon cochon, Seberg says, a somewhat rude but respectful soldier's expression of admiration for a truly mean son of a bitch. Thus encouraged, I spread my wings. My friend is an African student who spent a year studying sociology here. When he met your dog, it was, well, like a happy reunion of old friends. Those two just seem to be made for each other. You won't believe me if I tell you there was simply no way of keeping them apart. Mr. Crucian is slowly coming up for air. I don't know to what depth he had sunk, but he was one of those born fighters who refuses to stay down. Pioneer stuff. Are you trying to tell me your colored friend has taken the dog with him to Africa? That's right. I even paid for the dog's trip. I didn't want to separate them. There's certain things you just can't do. The little girl begins to rub her eyes. I want my Fido back, she yells and sobs. Heartbreaking. I feel about as moved as Genghis Khan reading Little Women. Poor little thing, Seberg says, and, believe it or not, there is a sincere note of pity in her voice. Let's get this straight. I love all kids, ever since I had one myself. But if I remained untouched by this display of blonde sorrow, the reason is precisely my love of kids. A cop by the name of Loader, the adopted son of Hedy Lamarr, shot and killed a 14-year-old black girl in some ghetto the other day. And why is it that the average age of kids shot in the ghetto by police is somewhere between 17 and 19? Why? Yeah, give her a popsicle, I say. Upon reading these pages, the representative in Paris of a very clean-living American magazine told a friend of mine, "Why doesn't Gary go and smell up his own ass?" The reason is simple. Everybody is allowed to take a breather. You can't keep smelling roses all the time. You've got to break away from daily routine occasionally. And what the hell does he know about America anyway? The man added. I wish some Americans, black and white, would get over once and for all the idea that they possess a kind of privileged, secret, esoteric, and exclusive knowledge of themselves. This is particularly comical coming from a country which has been entrusting the exploration of its deeper secrets and the probing of its subconscious for 2 generations to Austrian and German psychoanalysts. Besides, with all due respect for the mysterious West, I have to remind them that the greatest revolution of the 20th century is visibility. The whole world walks the streets naked, and all the remarks of the kind, "You are not a Negro, you can't understand," "You are not an American, you can't understand," etc., are nothing but racism. There are no places out of bounds for the eye and the mind any longer. The kids' whimperings subside, and a great silence falls. A great white silence. The sheriff is getting my message. He is getting it loud and clear. "You had no right to dispose of that dog," he says, his voice shaking a bit. I nod. "Sure. Listen, I'm going to write to Africa. Mind you, I'm sure your dog is treated like a king. Anyway, he won't lack anything out there. There are 200 million blacks in Africa. They ought to keep him happy. His face hardens. It's that law and order look with a touch of self-righteous anger. His old rugged hands come down protectively on the two blonde heads. The son of a bitch is an excellent grandfather. But again, the most heartbreaking thing is that this man is not a son of a bitch. He is as nice as God can make them. If evil things were done only by evil men, the world would be an admirable place. I'm going to see a lawyer, he says. Do that. It always helps. Jean shows them to the door. Then she comes back, puts her arms around me, and presses her cheek against my head. We must have stayed like that for a long time without speaking, with silence becoming one of those blessed moments when everything is shared. And then I made the mistake of giving her one of my little lessons of maturity, that is, of a wariness which tries to pass for wisdom. Jeannie, give it up. You can't reach the real ones, the millions and millions of those who are the only ones who can give any authenticity to those who are working for them. You can't start from the top. All the true ones, the real leaders, came up from the lower depths, from the hard truth, and they keep their roots down there. But you, at best, you deal with the top, with the elite, and that's simply not good enough. It's a deluxe situation. It's more being social than social work. It's like knowing about lepers only from talking to Dr. Schweitzer. Giving your money away isn't good enough either. You can give your money to them, sure, but unless you get down to the roots and work there, no matter how sincere you are, I know, it is still a deluxe situation. A cop-out, like buying peace of mind and a good conscience. And this crowd that hangs around you all day long, they're fakes. The pseudos, the talkers. Professional Negroes, and you know what I mean by that. People who make a living for themselves by being black and nothing else, gaming Whitey, not out of hatred, revenge, or honest-to-God necessity, but just because they're con men, traditional American crooks hiding conveniently behind their black skins. You've got to face the fact that the black predicament and white guilt offer an ideal situation to the black status seeker. His status among the white liberals and the true Democrats is entirely made up out of the lack of any status whatsoever of the black masses. All he has to do is to be a black among the well-intentioned whites. 20 million black Americans do the rest. They work for him. And there's another barrier you will never be able to break through. That of your profession. No matter how sincere and well-meaning and determined a movie star is, whenever she involves herself in a real social problem, she just looks more like a movie star than before. Flashbulbs, publicity, front pages, irony, and winks behind her back. Whenever a film star touches tragic social realities, the realities get second billing, and the blacks, Indians, or Mexicans become extras or, at best, a supporting cast. See what I mean? No matter what suffering you're actually trying to alleviate, you'll always look as if you're standing there on location for stills and saying, cheese, or else you have to chuck movies and work at the roots, at the bottom of the ladder. When a movie star uses the publicity that surrounds her name to publicize social injustices she deeply cares about, all she really gets is publicity for herself. And there will always be the suspicion that the movie star is using the blacks not for the blacks' sake and not for her own publicity either, but as a means of breaking away from the label of emptiness and artificiality that is stuck on her. Indeed, that she uses the cause, Vietnam, the blacks, for her own purpose, to show how human she is, to reach a human being's status. Back to her ego again. Whenever a movie star moves in on a cause, she always gives the impression that she acted in too many movies with a social message and continues to play the heroine in real life, that it's all part of a pretending which seeks to validate itself, a kind of actor's studio technique of truly immersing yourself in the character you're playing. In other words, no matter how sincerely you try, you only seem to be trying to achieve the actor's sincerity, and whatever you do for them always looks like something you're doing for yourself, working on your own image and working on your own problems. When Seberg gets hurt or angry, her voice takes on a curiously earthy proletarian peasant. I don't know how to describe it. Quality. It sounds as if it were coming from some long-gone mid-19th century wagon train on its way to the frontier through Indian country. I know all that, and I don't give a damn. And I'll tell you why. Because what you're saying is audience thinking. I don't give a damn how it looks from outside. I won't be dictated to by public opinion. That's image thinking. Press agents thinking. I just want to do my bit, period. Who cares if it makes me look like a clown in their eyes? What you're really trying to tell me is to care about my image. Are you kidding? All I'm saying is that you do more harm than good, because a movie star who moves in on a tragic reality always gives it an unreal touch. That Hollywood something. Listen, Romain, that's a too goddamn sophisticated point of view. There's a school with 30 kids in it, and let me tell you that their black reality is of a kind that even Hollywood can't make unreal. It's not Hollywood that will give it a touch of unreality. It's the other way round. I mean, it's strong enough to give even Hollywood a touch of reality. 30 ghetto kids. That's reality, all right. I got a $5,000 check from them from Bill Fisher, and that's reality again. It's worth it. I mean, it's worth looking laughable. It's worth all the irony and the columnists' ha ha ha. It's worth all the bullshit. Period. I feel her tears on my neck, and I know they are black tears gone white. Jesus. You just don't have the right to analyze tears, and I find myself wishing I could achieve that blessed holy American naivete or primitivism, the moral and psychological equivalent of Grandma Moses, and get rid of Voltaire, La Rochefoucauld, and the kind of French intellectual cleverness that has done so much for literature and so little for people. There is no substitute whatsoever for a certain basic naivete or even a certain squareness if you are not to be paralyzed by too much worldly awareness and made unable to act by sophisticated over-consciousness. A school without hate. You know what that means? If those black kids are really brought up without hate in the only school without hate in this country, they'll be severely handicapped for life, unable to stand up to others. It's like throwing the first Christians to the lions. My contrived dialectics brought instantly to mind the coldly interested look on Mario David's face and I could almost hear his words again. And with your ears, Romain, you do nothing? Listen, you old French bastard, I tell myself, why don't you admit you care more about your young wife than about black Americans? I shut up and kiss her arm. I know there's that ghastly film star movie touch about everything I try to do. I'll just stop making movies. I hear myself saying, why? Why did I feel compelled to come up with that? I hear myself saying, if you stop being a film star, you won't need to find excuses for being Gene Seberg, the film star, and you'll probably feel no need to help them. Because that's my only motivation? Jesus, please be a good Jew and climb off that cross for Christ's sake. I give up. Okay, I'm a cynic, but I've had it. I'm clearing out. I can't take it. 20 million black Americans in my house night and day, that's too much even for a professional writer. All that's going to come out of it is another fucking book. I'm going to do them. That's all I've ever done for people. Literature. That's what it always comes down to with a professional writer. Another bestseller, more recognition, another literary prize, nobility of feelings for all to see. Let me shake your hand, sir. Then one day, maybe you get the Nobel Prize for Literature and you truly know what you've done with the world's anguish, suffering, and blood. You made a success story out of it. Literature. Yep. I've already made that out of the war, out of my mother, out of Auschwitz, out of the bomb, out of African freedom, but I absolutely refuse to make literature out of American blacks. Let the blacks themselves get some good literature out of it. That's their gold. You know me, Jeannie. Whenever I'm confronted with a situation that drives me nuts and that I'm unable to do anything about, absolutely helpless and condemned to just sit there and stare at it, I get rid of it in a book, a psychological process of elimination. I defecate it. I write it out of my system. Wonderful release. After that, I eat, sleep, and feel better. A new man. But it's high time to stop this self-therapy on the backs of other people's tragedy. So I'm not going to play cannibal on American blacks and feed a new book on their flesh. I'm clearing out. I won't write a thing about the blacks. I absolutely refuse. Honey, you'll do that book anyway. Jeannie, let's get away from it. Let's both get away. You've lived 10 years in France. You're French by marriage. I feel, live, love, and stink American until I drop dead. I can't be anything but an American. You know that. You've just got to scratch the surface. They don't give a damn about you here. Bribe her, man. Try bribery. It may work. I grab a bunch of French reviews of her latest European movie from the table. Listen to what they think of you in France. François Morit. The marvelous Jean Seberg is in herself enough to make me love this picture. A talent blessed with beauty. The most sensitive, trembling, touching performance. And what do those American provincial types write about you in the New York backwoods? She yells at me now. Who gives a damn about that? Jesus Christ. He sure doesn't. I'm staying right here until that school is out of trouble. Okay. And I refuse to live with America on my back. The doorbell rings. I get up to answer it. Them. Who else? It's a kind of place. Headquarters. American idealism and goodwill ring the bell. 5 ladies and gentlemen in tribal dress. I roar in French. Merde, merde, j'en ai assez. I've had enough, and slam the door in their grinning, we know how you feel, buddy, faces. I turn toward my wife. I think I hollered at her. I always holler when I feel helpless. They're here. They're there, with compliments from America. They keep insisting, the heartless bastards. All right, since they insist, I'm going to do it. You know perfectly well I can't resist it. I'm going to write a fucking book about them. That's how I'm going to get rid of them. Genocide. That's what it is. Genocide. Books, they help you get rid of everything. Mass murder, and it cleanses your conscience too. You feel great after you've done it. Another book, you know, and it changes the world and rightens everything with one stroke of your magic ink wand. It's going to put an end to all the blacks' problems. The Way, War, and Peace, All Quiet on the Western Front, and a million other books against war put an end to wars once and for all. Books that have changed the world, you know. And if you name me one that's accomplished something except being a book, I'll kiss your feet. So either you come back with me and to me, or clear the house of the problem for me, or I'll be the one to clear out. I'll stuff your 20 million black Americans in a book, and they'll never be heard from again. Self-defense. She goes to the door, opens it a bit, and smiles ironically. Just a second, she says. My husband is undressing. I yell, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, I'm going. Okay, go. I rush to the garage and jump behind the wheel. Panic. Sheer animal panic. In that famous Proust questionnaire all French writers are sooner or later submitted to, I answered the question, what is the military deed you most admire? With the word flight. I have fought all my generation's battles since I was 17. I have done my bit. I want no more of that. Thanks. All I ask from life now is to be permitted to smoke a few more cigars. Except that there's not a word of truth in it, not a trace of truth. And there's nothing more torturing than being unable to give up hope once and for all. And so, old man, run away and fast. I follow sunset toward the ocean, but make a sharp U-turn, collect a ticket, and drive back and through cold water and across Ventura to Noah Jack Carruthers' crummy ark. Through the grounds and into the kennel section, and then to that cage. Batka stands up on his hind legs and licks my face lovingly through the netting. I kiss him on his cold, wet truffle of a nose. Goodbye, Batka Badiuchka. I talk to him in Russian so as to make sure no one will understand us. Please listen to me, brother mine. I'm not asking you not to bite blacks. I'm asking you not to bite only blacks. I think he understands me. He wags his tail. Dogs never fail to recognize their own. I buy myself a toothbrush and get on the first plane to Honolulu, then Manila, Hong Kong, Calcutta. I make a stop here and there, a few days, just long enough to feel disoriented and to lose sight of myself under the soothing impact of local color, exoticism, of all that is supposed to be foreign, strange, picturesque, and different from all you are and all you know. A stop here, a stop there, a quick kaleidoscope change, never time enough to be truly exposed to reality, gliding over the surface of things. Oh, those soothing delights of superficiality. Skip over the surface, old man. Travel light and fast. That's how to attain and enjoy a blessed illusion of estrangement, alienation, and indifference. Don't peek behind the painted veil of appearance. Don't lift it, or else you'll realize that it merely serves to hide our essential identity of anxiety, fear, and questioning ignorance, the primeval unchanging curse of the status of limitations within our genes, brain, and heart, and you'll come once more face to face with yourself, old man forever condemned to infancy and forever dreaming of manhood. Chapter 5. My DC-6 was droning through the night above the Khmer temples, towns, and rice paddies of Cambodia when back in Los Angeles, Sandy pricked up his ears, rose from his favorite place at Jean's feet, and walked over to the door. He put his truffle to the ground, sniffed, then began to wag his tail, signaling the approach of a welcome visitor. It was Batka. He had run away from the kennel, finding his way across Ventura, the San Fernando Valley, and Beverly Hills to come back home to his family. Jean was to tell me later there was more love than she could bear in the old dog's eyes. There could be no question of keeping an animal around the house whose presence in our midst, with all our black friends coming and going, was like offering hospitality to both the swastika and the yellow star of David. I had a lousy night trying to reconcile the irreconcilable, a dilemma which in itself smacked of pool de luxe, dilettantism, moral subaratism. There shouldn't have been a dilemma at all, no exquisite scruples, no hesitation. The dog had to go. The next morning she called Carruthers. So he found his way back home. Great. I'm glad to have that one off my back. There was something more in Carruthers' voice than mere satisfaction. A true delight. You're not what I would call a man who wants to change the world, Jack. That's what comes from living with a writer, Jean. You take a dog and you make a world out of it. You know what happened the other day? First of all, one of the blacks who works for me, the youngest of them, tried to poison your copper. Put enough strychnine in his food to knock him off 22 times. The dog didn't touch it. Not because he smelled the poison either, but food served up by black hands. Imagine that. Jack, it isn't possible. Of course it's not possible. Half the things that happen aren't possible. I knew nothing about this little incident. I'm the boss, so nobody tells me anything. But the next day, this kid Terry, he's 18, you know, the clean, idealistic age, went to find Fred Tatum, who feeds the cur because he's so white that he apparently smells good miles away, and the dog loves him. It seems, Jean, that you and I have a little odor of our own, something truly special. I can prove it to you dog in hand. Anyway, the kid went to Fred and asked him point blank to poison your racist. Tatum told him he was 70 and didn't have it in him no more. He no longer had what it takes to go and poison a dog just like that. His moral fiber was no longer strong enough. He was too old, senile. In fact, count him out. He didn't want to take part in human affairs anymore. Call him No Guts Tatum and leave it at that. I found out what was going on behind my back only because there was a hell of a row between Terry and Keys. Keys gave the kid a real thrashing. You guess why, of course. Of course. It's absurd to take it out on an innocent animal. Keys is intelligent enough to know that. No, Gene, you're wrong. Keys is much, much more intelligent than that. So much more that I often feel he isn't thinking, he's scheming. He's not the kind of guy who meditates. He's the kind who premeditates. Anyway, he really gave it to the kid, and then, the day before yesterday, they outdid themselves. I heard them hollering in the locker room, and it sounded pretty bad, so I went to have a look. I found Terry stark naked and Keys holding a gun in his hand. It was my gun. Terry had stolen it from my office and hidden it in his underpants. Apparently, he meant to kill your hound. Shoot him through the head, the way Black Panthers talk. Yeah, talk. That's what we're coming to in this country. Do you realize what this kind of lunacy implies? I mean, the deep down accumulation of pus it reveals? It ain't no longer a wound. No, ma'am. A wound, that's frank, open, clean bleeding. It's kind of healthy. It's no wound and all pus now. Because it's not a racial problem any longer. It's about how to deal with insanity, mental hygiene. That's what it's about. How you go about curing mental sickness. Where do you begin? So, Gene, you can imagine how sorry I was when I heard your pooch got away. Just heartbroken. Didn't you help him a bit, Jack? You fiend. Nope, not me. Maybe it was Tatum or some other white guy out of the kindness of his heart. Had I been in Paris then, I would have no doubt received a cable asking me to meet our four-legged white American at Orly Airport. But I was in Hong Kong at the time. The problem was solved for Jean in a curious way. I don't blame her for falling into the trap. There are worse traps than trusting people. It was dark, 8 or 9 in the evening. Jean was getting ready for some night shooting at the studio. Botka and Sandy had just treated themselves to a good dinner in the kitchen and had gone to stretch out in the living room. The sound of a car stopping in front of the house came in from the street, and Botka was instantly on his feet, growling, pointing his bared fangs at the door, and then letting go with one of those howls that seemed to come from the depths of time. There were footsteps outside, and the bell hadn't rung yet when an extraordinary change came over the dog. He stuck his tail between his legs and began to back away from the door. He kept on howling, but now there was a whining, self-pitying sound of fear and helplessness in his voice. It would come out as a threatening howl and then change almost instantly into those plaintive little yelps and whines which are a dog's equivalent to crying between two new feeble attempts at threatening barks that ended up in a sort of broken-hearted nasal whine of self-pity, as if the dog were driven to despair by his awareness of the total lack of credibility in his attempts at fearsome warnings. And still, his body stiff and his head raised high in that time-honored attitude of a dog moaning at the moon, stars, and eternity in darkness, he kept backing away from the door. Jean opened the door slightly while keeping it on the chain. Keys. A pleasant smile, a quiet cigarette between his fingers, the burning side toward the palm of his hand, the relaxed air of a day's work done and gone, the lean, young body, the evening's soothing coolness and peace. And that smile. I can see it now, full of sharp, glittering whiteness, with the night and the man grinning at you with all the brightness of light in darkness. Hi there. Hi. Wait a minute. I'll lock the animal in the garage. More smile and more teeth. You don't have to do that. Don't bother. Those days are over. He won't try no funny stuff anymore. Well, I know about dogs, Miss Seberg. I really do. That's one thing I know about. Dogs and snakes. Yep, that's my line. Things have changed, though. I can't say we're buddies yet, for now. But things have changed all the same. There's been some progress. You can let me in. I'll be all right. Jean took the chain off hesitantly. You sure? Keyes pushed the door wide open and walked in. Botka's growls deepened and grew angrier, more threatening, and for a few seconds it looked as if White Dog were coming back into his own again. But for Jean, who had seen him leap instantly at the enemy, with the resolute lunge forward of a good soldier answering the call of duty, the change was fantastic. Keyes moved into the center of the room, cigarette in hand, smiling at the beast, and White Dog, his tail between his legs, his head twisted sideways in a half-screw turn, kept backing away from the black American with howls that were almost pathetic in their helpless fury, small hysterical barks ending again and again in that "what is the matter with me, why can't I do it" self-pitying whine. Again and again he would gather himself for the leap, but couldn't bring it off, as if unable to break through a mental barrier that was new, frightening, and incomprehensible to him. In Seberg's words, you could see it went against the grain, against years of training, conditioning, and an inbred sense of what he was all about, against the very meaning of his dog devotion and loyalty toward his people. I could tell by those self-pitying whines and half-hearted attempts at menacing barks that the animal no longer believed in himself. White Dog felt he was betraying everything he had been taught. Jean was standing near the open door, full of night and stars, while man and beast faced each other. You see, Miss Seberg, there's been some change, Keyes said. Now they are scared. Nope, I'm not making it up. I'm not capable of that. I lack what it takes. I lack those 3 centuries of no name for it. Jean was sure she heard that sentence. Now they are scared. If these few words, almost Homeric in their sweeping generalization, fail to enlighten you as to what centuries have piled up and up and up in the black man's soul, then you may as well admit that it is not only of the black man that you have had enough, it is of the soul itself, and that you are ready for a more useful gadget. Police dogs like Botka, I am told, almost all have generations of specially trained animals behind them. Both training and their inbred atavistic capital of push-button hatred are improved. That is, facilitated by environment with its automatic way of conditioning. Untrained dogs in black sections of the South will bark at whites just as in white neighborhoods they bark at blacks. Conditioning, training, and environment snowballed through generations until this ugliness becomes second nature. White Dog was on the defensive. The hatred and savagery were still there, but the fear had built up a new mental barrier between the animal and the black man, and the dog could not bring himself to break through. He would inch forward in half leaps that followed the rhythm of his barking, then back away again as if pulled by an invisible leash. His hair bristled, he flattened his ears back, his tail coiled down between his legs, torn between his aggressive, dangerous, fear-inspiring old nature and his new, cringing, jackal-like cowardice, an agony of split personality with the 2 parts clashing with each other, the new and the old, with the bewildered, uncomprehending look in the dog's eyes becoming a dumb, anguished, why? Keyes lit a new cigarette, glanced at the dog, and laughed. Jean was to tell me later that there was something sickening about the whole thing. First of all, Keyes' laugh. It was a victorious laugh, and God, there've got to be other and more valid triumphs. This one of man over beast wasn't any more pleasant to see than any victory achieved through fear, force, and terror. Because, you see, the first question that came to my mind was, how did he do it? Yes, this change, this triumph, how had it been achieved? By what means? Beating? Torture? Attacking those who were out of reach and winning a symbolic victory with the dog paying the price. The most revolting thing was the sight of that maddened, totally disoriented dog disobeying his own reflexes, terrorized, lost, trapped, caught up in something that had nothing to do with dogs, entangled in human sickness, hate, fear, and prejudice, a dog who was becoming human through a typically human, dehumanizing process. This historical dog, it was hideous and humiliating. I almost hated Keyes at that ignoble moment of his victory, but in a totally impersonal way, the way you hate it all, the whole damn sick mess. You can't always go on piously blaming everything on society. There are times when you're a louse on your own. The excuse, the pretext, the whole idea of helping an animal with his problem, of making him recover, of curing him of his sickness, all of that, and the dog himself had very little to do with it. It was all about men. Context of White Supremacy. We are, let's see, for me, bottom of 65. We'll pick up, she told him rather sharply, I can see you left him quite a souvenir. Gene Seberg speaking. Bottom, very, very bottom of 65. That's where we'll pick up at. Context of White Supremacy. Number to dial 720. Hope we got that crazy new number. Let's see if I got it. Oh, there we go. New number is, oh no, it's not it. 720. Oh, I thought I pressed that again and it still didn't do it. Whew. Will take me a moment to memorize the new number. One of these days I'll have it. Nope, and it's still not. So there we go. All right, so the new number is 720-716-7300. New number 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Whew. Wow. What a segment of reading. I did not know this book was going to dive off into, wow, we haven't even got the full foot. Whew. What a read. What a read. I can see the ISIS papers right on my shelf, but we're focused on this book. But man, oh man, Romulus and Remus, that will be one of the intros. Like, Batka again means little father in Russia. He explained that, well, I was going to say it way back, but it was last week. It's only our second segment. Anyway, let me get in one caller who wrote in, and then we'll get the folks who dialed in. So last week I was reading one of our investors who wrote in, and I had to stop because we didn't get that far in the book, but we've got that far now, so I can go back and finish up the commentary from last week. We stopped at number 4. Number 4. Put the cur in a clean living kennel with no niggers. This is from last week's section. He's a black Muslim, you know. All you can do is help him get a ticket to Mecca. I'm told the Muslims qualify for one if they present Elijah Muhammad with 5 blonde scalps or 5 pairs of pink ears. The author doesn't hide his contempt for white American liberals, but doesn't comment on the overt racism of Jack Carruthers. Maybe he didn't comment on it due to it being so obvious. Excellent point. Mr. Carruthers makes a lot of very disparaging comments about black people. I was going to point that out this week. Next, 5. I did a web search on the author's wife, actress Jean Seberg. She was investigated and harassed by the FBI throughout the COINTELPRO program. It took me a moment. We have read about Jean Seberg before on the program. If you get drugs as weapons against us, John Potash, he was a guest on the program. The cows actually got a shout out in that book. She's referenced there, her work with the Black Panther Party. I believe she's also referenced in Agents of Repression. Now, we've not read that book on this program, but I read that book personally, and I think she's talked about there as well. I told you all last week that the author, Romain, he committed suicide, I believe in 1980, 2 years before this book was made into a movie. His wife, Jean Seberg, committed suicide before he did. This is detailed, I believe, in Agents of Repression, where the FBI did all, not all, because they killed black people, many of them, Fred Hampton, many other black people, but they ran their campaign and said, oh yes, this whore, Jean Seberg, and she's sleeping around with all these black males in the Panther Party and blah, blah, blah. And same type of smear campaign. She got pregnant and they did all the same type of harassing and that type of thing. And she ended up having a miscarriage, losing the child. And she ended up committing suicide, I believe, like 3 years after she had the miscarriage. And it was very close to the anniversary of when she lost the child. Romain Gary told reporters that he believed the FBI was responsible for the death of his wife because she never recovered from losing her child. He also thought they were responsible for that, and there's a lot of records of that. COINTELPRO, white supremacist enforcement agencies harassing black people, non-white people, period, but harassing them, and particularly mothers, while they are pregnant and they end up having a miscarriage. Lots of examples of that throughout. But yeah, that's Jean Seberg. We've talked about her. Or yeah, COINTELPRO, a lot of the documents, books that are about COINTELPRO, her name will pop up as one of the white people helping out the Panthers who ended up being punished by J. Edgar Hoover. He was no fan of Miss Seberg. Okay, people who dialed in, *61 if you have commentary to share. Let's see. Yikes. Our caller, Silent Warrior in Norway. See if I can do my math. So it is 3:09 a.m. Norway time. We'll see what he has to say. White Dog, our first audio segment.
Hello.
Greetings, Silent Warrior.
So, okay, Garrett, dropping out a little bit.
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So, this is a great book. It's very rich with what you've called Wilson moments. I see examples of many examples of referring to sex, and also many examples referring to inadequacy and projection. But I'll start off at the beginning. What I notice in the beginning is racists admiring each other. So the author speaks of the attitude of the grandfather as a pioneer, and that his presence speaks of a civilization that had solved all of its social problems. And the exchange between them reminds me of that scene in Django near the end where the white bounty hunter is having a show-off between the slave master of Candy Island. I also noticed that they are doing the show-off, they are competing with each other, where the author his move is practicing deception, and the move of the grandfather other is that he's the one who commits violence or the threat of violence to non-whites. So that's their competition as racists with each other in that scene. Deception versus violence, and in this case, deception wins. Before they even compete with each other, you see this Walton moment where the author is stuffing a brownie in his mouth. This happens right before the confrontation, and it reminds me of when Popeye is about to eat spinach before he starts the fight. And this Walton moment of consuming a dark thing is repeated when he talks about in his argument with his wife about that he will play cannibal on American blacks and feed a new book on their flesh. So that's another example of consuming a dark thing. Then his inadequacy as a white male is exposed when his wife opens the door to the blacks that he had shut the door on and says he's undressing. When he undresses, he shows white skin. So that's an example of inadequacy. Just have three more points. One thing I noticed is that there was some rejection where he talks about shooting the dog through the head. When Noah says that Terry wanted to shoot the dog through the head, here's the author creating a situation in the book which is exactly what he was going to do. There's something really clever in the way that they wrote. He said, it's absurd to take it out on an innocent animal. Keyes is intelligent enough to know that, but the author could either be talking about Terry, the black kid, or he could be talking about the white dog. So here, when he writes that, it sounds as if he's calling Terry, the black kid, an animal. So that was the treatment of blacks. And finally, I noticed that, I think I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you. I'll mute my line.
Much obliged, Silent Warrior. Ringing in, I guess, depending on your perspective, late in the evening, early in the day, Norway time. Yikes. Other folks, if you have commentary, *61. Let's see, I will read. One of our investors had notes from this week. I didn't even get through all the notes from last week he shared, so now we can move along to this week. Let's see. All right, here we go. Number one. I came across this article some time ago, which other listeners may find interesting and relevant to the reading. Slave Hounds and Abolition in the Americas by Tyler D. Perry, Parry, and Charlton W. Yingling. It discusses the important role of the dog during American chattel slavery. It is free. Oh, it is a free download. That's always great. Slave Hounds and Abolition in the Americas. Number 2. In Chapter 4, the author encounters the owners of vodka. The author discusses Crucian salts. I expect him to behave like one of those cliché Southern heavies in the movies, but the fact is that I am dealing with a completely honest, decent, and straightforward person. It is clear that the author respects and admires the suspected racist. Further in the chapter, the author again doesn't hide his contempt for the activist efforts of his wife and goes on to voice a long diatribe against the black people who work with her. Fakes, pseudoscientific bullshit, professional Negroes, con men. Again, Romain Gary, I believe it's in the New Yorker. They have him listed as a con man for all of the lies that he told throughout his life, lies where he won literary prizes and all this, lies about his background and where he grew up. It's in the title of the article on Romain Gary. Liar, con man. And the audacity. Anyway, where was I at? Oh, yes. Con man. Traditional crooks hiding conveniently behind their black skin. The author respects a bunch of racists who own a killer racist dog, but has nothing but contempt for a group of victims of racism. Say it twice. And trained generations of racist hounds. He's a kindly grandfather. Number 3. In Chapter 5, the author and his wife demonstrate their concern and affection for the dog as opposed to Keys. Regarding the dog, Jean, the wife, says, there was more love than she could bear in the old dog's eyes. Regarding Keys, he isn't thinking, he's scheming. Later in the chapter, Jean is quoted, I almost hated Keys. This is a great example of the hypocrisy of racists, who, on one hand, can advocate against racism and at the same time still practice racism. Cha-ching. Love it, love it, love it. Number 4. Chapter 5. I was unclear about Key's statement about the change in the white dog. Now, they are scared. Is Keyes using his work with the dog as a metaphor for changing the power dynamic with racist white supremacists? Question. I would say so. We'll toss that one out to listeners as well, because that sentence, now we've heard it like 5 times on this broadcast because it gets repeated. Now, they are scared. And in the book, they have they in italics for emphasis. They are scared. Now, literally, he was talking about the white dog at that moment, but it certainly seemed like he was talking about a collective white they, as though white people are scared of black people. That is absurd. I don't care what time. Again, we can do the same thing we've done for stuff. It could be 2017. It could be 1917, 1970, 2007, 1870. Pick a year. System of racism, white supremacy. White people are not afraid of black people. I don't think they would have all these niggras piled up in their house if they were afraid of black people. Lots of examples. We just have to keep reading. We just have to keep reading and see how fearful white people are of black people. But anyway, we'll stop there. He has more commentary, but we haven't got that far in the book, so we have to come back to it. But if folks have thoughts about Key's sentence, what did he mean exactly? Now, they are scared. And again, so this book was published in 1970, so this would be similar context, right, to what we have now, 1970s, all the upheaval and so-called riots and Black Panther Party and all the rest of it. Similar to right now, system of white supremacy. So that would have been the context of this. Now they are scared. I'll rewind. Before I go to some of my notes, for other folks, if you have commentary, feel free as well. But before I go to some of my notes, there is a movie to this book as well, right? The book is substantially different. And for all these, I'd seen the movie years ago. It's been over 10 years since I've seen the movie. The movie's been out since 1980, 40 years. I did not know how substantially different the movie is from the book. Like I said last week, we've already diverted. Like it's a done deal. If you're thinking you can watch the movie and try and figure out what we're reading the rest, nope. Everything that is similar between the book and the movie is done. And in fact, it ended last week. Like there's nothing. Like Key's character this is a totally different Key's character than the guy in the, like, oh my God, like reading this book and now looking at the movie is like, whoa, they couldn't even do a movie with what's in this book. Like the Key's character is not Muslim, like he's trying to rehabilitate this dog. He doesn't want the dog to be racist, and he's hoping that if he can change this dog, maybe this will be a metaphor for white people, that white people too can be changed to not be racist. Key's character is not white people are afraid of us now, and I broke this dog's ribs and beat him down because I got upset thinking about why. That's not Key's character in the movie at all. Like, it's totally different how the dog is found. Like in the movie, the dog has already killed 2 or 3 people, I think, by the time you've watched 30 minutes of 2 or 3 black people by the time you've watched the first 30 minutes of it. They do not include in the movie, this dog has been trained to attack black males exclusively. That's not in the movie. In fact, in the movie now, although this dog only kills black males, he does attack a black female and she lives. But they make a point in this book repeatedly of saying this dog has been trained to attack black males. They don't say black the man or black men or anything like this, where it's black males. I thought that's significant as well. I even said last week, how do you do that? How do they distinguish between male and female? What if you got transgender? How does the dog know? Anyway, it just has astounded me even more as we continue to read how substantially different the film is from the book. The film does not have this extraordinary and detailed critique of white liberals. All of that has been totally eliminated. It really just focuses on the dog and the white woman who finds him. Like they remove Romain Gary's character as well and just have this dog be found by a white woman. But fascinating, the amount of differences. Like I said, you cannot cheat this one and watch the movie and think you're going to comment on the book, because it's 2 different things, really. Let's see. Folks are being lazy or getting their thoughts together. I'll look at some of my notes, even though I generally prefer to have folks go first that way. I generally have way more notes than you all do, so I am not overlapping. But let's see. Notes that I took. So this is Romain Gary talking about Crucian Shaw. This is another big difference. In the movie, now they do have, even the characters, they have Mr. Key's character in the book is played by Paul Whitfield, who is an older black guy. Now, in the book, they said repeatedly, Keyes is young, lean, black male. I don't know why they decided to age him, and Mr. Whitfield is not exactly, I mean, he doesn't look tubby or anything, but it's just, he's not like a lean, fit, young-looking guy in this film. So that was a substantial, in addition to him not being, Muslim and scheming and all the rest of it, and him trying to make this dog not racist. But the white people who train this dog, you don't meet them until the end, and it's very brief. In the movie, it's like 30 seconds. They do have this older, grandfatherly, Crucian Salts white guy, and he's got his grandchildren with him. But they come, did you find our dog? We'd love to have him back. And the white woman gets very upset and says, get out of here. We cured the dog. A black man fixed him. Get out of here. We don't talk to you anymore. And the grandfather gets upset. What? You stole our dog? We're going to call the police. She says, good. I'm going to tell them what you did. Call the police. I hope you do, and they'll take you to jail. And she drives off, and that's it. That's the whole exchange. What's in the book is substantially more important. This dialogue about who trained. They don't even share in the movie that this is a police dog. Like, man, in the midst of all of this, in the midst of the time that this book was published, but in the midst of all this right now, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and blah, 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 defund the police, this is a police dog trained by someone who's trained police dogs for generations. They emphasize this point. Generational. This dog has generations of police hound behind him. It's a police dog that's been trained to hate black people. Black males, that's what they said in the book. Like, that is substantially different than just having some tubby citizen who, I hate the nigger, because you can just say, oh, that's some backwoods one-tooth person and blah, blah, blah. Wait a minute. This is a police dog that has been trained to attack black people on sight, black males on sight. And you got generations of, and then that sound clip I included at the beginning from When We Were Kings, the black people on the continent said they were offended that George Foreman bought White Dog, a German Shepherd, to Zaire because that's the same dog that they used on the continent. The police used on the continent to control the Kaffirs. What does it mean to be white? This is an incredible book. And even ponder on that one for a minute. Why would they take that detail out, that this is a police dog? It's not a white dog. This is a police dog that hates the Negro. I'll get to some of my other notes, but I mean, man, that's like point number one, where you will greatly diverge, book and movie. Let's see. Oh, that's already with us. Getting back, got confused. I'm promptly going to the second audio segment, so people that wait until the end, you'll just be waiting until we finish the second audio segment. Once I get done with my notes, we're not doing the horsing around and waiting if folks have commentary to share. Let's see. I give them, so this is Christian's Thoughts, and even that name, like I'd have to go, if I have extra time, I'll see if I can go and find if they have an image to the commercial, because I suspect this is like a real product. Crucian Salts, they probably got some white person, little shaker on the front of it, right? So he continues, he says, I give them, oh no, even before I get to that first one, I can say, I love that southern accent with its echoes of leisurely ways, of fields and white-columned mansions, of rocking chairs, porches, slow rivers, and ponies on the lawn. If that is not a description of like mint julep and plantation times, I mean, that's it exactly. The white columns, all of that. And even how do you get that leisurely time in the South? It's cotton picking season. How is it leisure? Oh, the niggras are in the field, and you got the hounds of the plantation to make sure that they behave and shuck the corn and pull the cotton and everything else. And you can be leisurely up in the shade, on the veranda. Isn't that what it is? Mint julep, raping the slave quarters when they're done. Got all the corn and cotton by that time. Let's see. He goes on. He says, I give them a nice warm smile, simply bursting with goodwill and honesty. He says, I give them, I have to correct that. Something else. I give them a nice warm smile, simply bursting with goodwill and honesty. I've been expecting this encounter and am ready for it. As a matter of fact, I'm enjoying every moment of it. I can feel the villain within me rubbing his hands gleefully. I mean, wow. Like, I don't know. How many of you all have scenes where you are gleefully lying to someone, and the children present, mind you, lying to them? I think our caller in Norway already pointed out going to give them brownies, the chocolate. Even something about that struck me as kind of like, I mentioned Jeffrey Epstein before, like, you don't even know these children. They just show up on your door, and the immediate impulse is, oh, let me go get them something sweet. I don't even know. Are you vegan? Do you consume dairy products? Do you have allergies or what have you? No, I'm just going to go stuff some chocolate in you. And I love it. He says that they are suspicious of him. They're kind of looking at him like, I don't know about this guy. Where's our dog? Where's Fido, man? Just give us our racist dog back, man. We don't want your brownies. Continuing. So he goes on with this lie. White people just immediate, like he's not, or at least he didn't say, I had already planned out I wasn't going to give the dog back at this point, and I was just going to go on to this big lie that I gave it away to a black person. He's in Africa, blah, 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 like just spontaneously, like, oh, I told you the article in the New Yorker, Romain Gary, con man. He is a known liar by other whites. So he goes into this big lie, like as soon as they get there, like, oh yeah, I'm not giving that. I don't care about these children. Grandfather, he's nice, plantation-ly kind of guy. Yeah, I'm not giving that. Yeah, I'm going my lie. And I hope my wife will support me in my lie. She's a bad liar. He points that out. She's not even good. Just shut up and let me handle it. I got the deception part of this. He goes on. This is on 46. He says, the blonde angel's face lit up. Figures out that, he might have the dog. Continues. My son just retired from the police. After 20 years, he plans to go into business for himself. He wants to open a kennel. He's a professional dog trainer, police dogs. Yes, he was in the state police. I used to be a sheriff. So this is generations. What does Mr. Scotty Reed in North Carolina? He says they're slave catchers. We got generations of slave catchers right here, training Alabama police dogs to hate and chomp on niggras. Probably trained police dogs all over the state. Now we come out here and I'm going to open up a kennel. And he says it, they got a crime problem out here. Unruly niggras. Better get you one of these dogs. Goes on, let's see. He's been training them for 20 years. He's a real professional. That's why he's moving out here to L.A. There's a lot of crime, so he's got a good market for good watchdog. My boy's always liked animals ever since he was a kid. Raccoons, I mean, the coons. What is it? The line from the NAACP. It was niggers, apes, alligators, coons, and possums. Let's see. He goes on, Crucian Salt's the grandfather. He says, with a dog like that in a house, you've got nothing to worry about. Now, in the movie, they don't have all this. Police dog, generations of racist police officers, white officers training this racist dog. But in the movie, they have a scene where a white rapist breaks into the house of the white woman who finds this dog, tries to rape her, and the dog violently attacks him until the police get there and save her. And the police are like, oh, wow, that's such a great dog. Ma'am, you did such a good job. You got it. Now, as I said, it's a white man who breaks into the house and tries to rape her. And there are several moments in the movie where this dog is doing things, either attacking the genitals of other white people or attacking this rapist, where it's implied that somebody tries to come around, doing some raping, probably a nigger. Dog will be ready. You're good to go. And that gets mentioned in the book repeatedly. Let's see. He comments repeatedly about how there are so many compliments to racists in the book. There's so many compliments to the dog about how loving and smart and intelligent, professional and well-trained he is. There's so many compliments to Crucian Salt's, this racist police grandfather fella who has his racist grandchildren with him and trained his racist son and trained all these racist animals, hosted this racist animal to chomp on black people. But he's such a great grandfather. Oh, he's a great guy. Wow. He's not an evil person at all. Salt of the earth. He's the reason we get things done. It's like, what? He doesn't talk about keys like that. Doesn't talk about black people like that at all. Doesn't even talk about the black child like that when they did the whole charade. Oh, do you hate me, little Jimmy? He didn't talk about Jimmy like that. Continuing. When Carruthers, so this is after all that's done, now he's back to talking about Carruthers. Or this is before we even get to Carruthers. There's many times where the phrase, the blacks, gets used. If people were with us for the book study when we read Leonida McLean, A Foot in Each World, she had that essay talking about the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago mayor's race, Harold Washington. And she said that they would do these interviews on the streets and people would be giving their views, and it would be that same phrasing, the blacks. And she talked about just the way that they would say it and how they would use it. She said, we don't talk. Why is it not? In fact, that's in the word or in the code book where Mr. Fuller says, do not say the blacks. He says you don't even say the whites. It should be black people. That's just another way of dehumanizing, like you're not even talking about people. And Leonida McLean in her article, she talked about that was the way it sounded, like they were talking about something just really foul. The blacks. The blacks. The blacks. And that's the exact phrasing, and that's the way it sounds, even though I'm having to read it, but that's the tone that I get from the context and how it's... This is on, 53? And there will always be the suspicion that the movie star is using the blacks, not for the blacks' sake, it immediately repeated, and not for her own publicity, but for as a means of breaking away from the label of emptiness and artificiality that is stuck on her. Indeed, that she uses the cause, Vietnam, the blacks. And it's just, it comes up again and again. Carruthers says it. It's multiple white, but the blacks. The blacks. That's why I said it's all the same. The niggras, the Negro, the Africans, the African Americans, the Nubians, the people of color, any other cute phrase, it's all the same. Let's see. So this is after all that's done, and so he's told his wife, "Oh, you phony liberals, you're wasting your time. You got all these pseudo-Negroes coming in here, wasting time, gaming Whitey, trying to get your money, and all the rest of it is foolish." And she gets upset. "Well, it's worth something. I'm helping them at this school, a little Jimmy, and the only school that doesn't hate, and all the rest of it." She starts crying, and he says, "I feel her tears on my neck. I know they are black tears gone white." I just had to pause with that for a second. Like, that struck me as really tacky in some way, but I'm still having to think about it. I know they are black tears gone white. Anyway. He has a lot, and I think Romain Gary is like really self-absorbed. He strikes me as someone who just enjoys hearing the sound of his own voice. With some of these really long prose where he's either talking about his wife or the pseudo-Negroes gaming Whitey and all the rest of it, where it's just like, man, can we get back to the dog? That would be important, as opposed to all of your ranting and add in all of your dialogue about this. Like, just get back to the dog. But when he's talking about, don't worry. First he starts, he doesn't want to write a book about the black people. And I thought this was interesting because of the way he described it. He described it as a metaphor for both sex and defecating. Which, wow. Talking about the same thing, writing a book about black people or whatever else. In one point, this act is compared to defecating. And then another point, the very same act, writing, is compared to having sex. Maybe it is, depending on what you're writing about and, the time and all that, the experience, how you feel about it. But, Anyway, so then he says, okay, I'm a cynic, but I've had it. I'm clearing out. I can't take it. 20 million black Americans in my house, which I also found a fascinating metaphor. It seems he's had maybe 3 or 4, and that's all of us. Night and day, that's too much, even for a professional writer, and that's going to come out. And all that's going to come out of it is another fucking book. I'm going to do them. And he has do in italics. And people doing it, all that is used generally as a metaphor for sexual intercourse, or often as a metaphor for sexual intercourse. And he even says, fucking book, right in the sentence. Those are literally the 2 words that precede, I'm going to do them. So I think the sexual connotation is right there. It's pretty flagrant. Delectable Negro, always raping the black body. Let's see. Even though I did agree with his point about a lot of times these white people, if not all the times, when these white people commence writing about racism, white supremacy, that's all it is. Raping black people, it's not going to solve a problem. It might make them some money or get them some attention, but it is not. It's not even designed. That's not even in the ballpark of why, this is being written. Let's see. So then they have their quarrel. He wants her to forget all this and come back with him to France. I'm tired of being with the African descendants of slavery, right? They've got on my nerves, forget all this C.O.W.S stuff. So either you come back with me and to me, or clear the house of the problem for me, or I'll be the one to clear out. I'll stuff your 20 million black Americans in a book and they'll never be heard from again. Self-defense. That's interesting terminology, particularly coming from a white person. And again, this is, 1969. This is like the year Fred Hampton was killed. This is literally like a year after Dr. King was killed. I don't know if you can imagine what that would be like, but to be that close to those types of incidents, flagrant violence against black people every day, not that far removed from John Lewis being out in the street, dogs chomping on him, Edmund Pettus Bridge and all the rest of it. Not that like this stuff is real fresh, kind of happening right now, and to have a white man, a professional writer white man who travels the globe, is self-defense. And then he compares it to genocide. I'll write them out of existence. Wow, this is a liberal white. This is the liberal, well-meaning white man. Wow. Let's see. Anything else? The blacks that comes with me. Carruthers. Oh my gosh, fascinating. I don't know. I guess I have the book, so I guess I have more detail than the folks that are just listening, perhaps. Whew. This is a fascinating book. So this is on page 69. Fascinating enough that it would warrant lots of commentary. 69. So now Carruthers, he's at Noah's Ark, the religion of white supremacy, where Gene Seberg, she goes back and they're trying to figure out, the dog, he's escaped and came back to them and what to do. And so Carruthers says, that's what comes from living with a writer gene. You take a dog and you make the world of it. You know what happened the other day? First of all, one of the blacks who works for me. See, even that, it's not just, oh yeah, one of my employees got upset and went out there and tried to poison him. It's one of the blacks who does actually work for me. And then he goes on with the story. So the blacks, he put enough strychnine in his food to knock him out. The dog didn't touch it, not because he smelled the poison either, but because food served up by black hands. Now, you want to tell me white people are ignorant about white supremacy racism? They didn't just train the canine to attack the nigger, the black male, they said. They trained the dog so well he won't even touch food from the hands of a coon. Are you serious? We just read in Einstein on race and racism where he said, oh, now come on. This was Einstein talking. He said, oh, come on. You don't have white people. Ain't nobody that racist where if a black physician were to come in and you're sick, and I said, whoa. I don't do Negro doctors. You can get me a white man. And I said, yes, that does happen. Now you got it again. We're so widespread. You got a dog. I've never seen dogs turn down food. I don't even like dogs. I've never even owned a dog. I have been around enough of them. I've never seen a dog turn down food. And look at somebody come up with a biscuit, slice of steak, anything, and say, I don't like redheads. Get away. Get away from me. Yeah. I've never even heard of that. And this dog, oh no, I don't eat from the coon. Yeah. What does it mean to be white? So they go on from this. Black guy tries to poison it. They get upset. What are you doing, trying to kill the dog? All that. I don't care if he's racist. You tried to bite your relative. You don't kill the dog. Anyway, so they tried to get this other white fella to poison him. He won't do it. He goes back to talking about Keyes. He says Keyes is much more intelligent. Wait a minute. He says Keyes is much, much more intelligent than that. So much more that I often feel he isn't thinking, he's scheming. They use that verbiage specifically. Gary says Keyes is scheming. Carruthers, Keyes is scheming. We got a thinking nigger here, dangerous. Not walking around here smiling. You got to watch that one. Wow. He's a scheming nigger, conniving scoundrel. Let's see. So he says, moving. I heard them hollering in the locker room, and it sounded pretty bad, so I went to have a look. I found Terry stark naked and Keyes holding a gun in his hand. It was my gun. Terry had stolen it from my office, hidden it in his underpants. Apparently, he meant to kill your hound, shoot him through the head the way Black Panthers talk. Yeah, talk. Now, I find that striking for about that. We're in the middle of this book about a racist hound, and now we're getting all this extemporaneous death. Like I said, this is 69 when this is happening, so the Black Panther Party is alive, and I think Huey P. Newton is in jail at this point. The way they talk, that's the opinion of white people who are supposed to be ignorant about racism, white supremacy, but they have concluded the niggras are just talk when it comes to guns. They just talk. Not worried about. He's in California. He at Noah's Ark does not sound in the least bit worried about the revolution. Black power, none of it. I'm chilling. Got my snakes, got my racist hound, got these talking niggras out here with the berets and guns. Nah. I said, I thought, now, you can compare and contrast what he said. Now, that's just in our reading today. Compare and contrast. So, you got Keys, the black trainer, who says, now they are scared. And we think he means white people. His boss, Mr. Carruthers, the Black Panthers. Let's read what he says exactly. Shoot him through the head the way Black Panthers talk. Yeah. Talk. And he's got talk in italics. Does Carruthers sound like he's scared of the Negro? Even the Negros who work there with him. Continuing. Fascinating text. Wow. Even the way he talks about Key's teeth. Now, we got a canine freaking racist dog here that is trying to chomp black people left and right throughout the book. And he's loving and called Baka, loving father, intelligent, well-trained little pooch. Keys, look how they described him. I can see it now, full of sharp, glittering whiteness. The night and the man grinning at you with all that brightness of light and darkness. Like, what in the world? Like, and he had talked about his teeth last week. Remember, he said that he seemed to have more teeth than you. Like, what? What kind of growling beast are we talking about here? The beast is white dog, not the black man. What does it mean to be white? Keep saying that again. Let's see. Oh, this will be my last page. And then fascinating segment of reading. I was stunned just going through the original reading. This is my first time reading this book. I so wish we had read this book when Dr. Welsing was still with us, so we could have asked, like, man, have you seen this book? I couldn't even ask about the movie, because now that I'm aware of this, like, the movie is kind of, not that good. We're like, man, you'd have to fast forward to this, and then why they left all of this out of the film. But so he says, yeah, let me back up so we get the full context. So he says, you could see, let me get up. So this is after Keys comes in the house, and Jean Seberg, this white woman, eventual suicide victim, COINTELPRO victim, the dog normally would have chomped on Keys, bit his jugular out. I hate the nigger. 3 generations. I've been well trained. I'll stomp on a nigger. Raping coon. Now, he's scared. They said Keys last week broke a couple of ribs and beat him down and all that. Now, it's like, I don't know. Got me before. I don't know. I can't. The coon, I want to jump on him, but and she's watching this and she feels bad. She feels sorry for the dog. This is how he describes it. He says, you could see it went against the grain, against years of training, conditioning, and an inbred sense of what he was all about. I dropped everything right there. I don't know if this book is top 10, but wow. There are very few books I could point to that would give you more clarity. Just keep saying, what does it mean to be white? Give that sentence again, page 63. You could see it went against the grain, talking about this racist dog. Now he's not chomping on a black person. She feels awful about it. You could see it went against the grain, against years of training, conditioning, and an inbred sense of what he was all about, against the very meaning of his dog devotion and loyalty toward his people. The animal no longer believed in himself. What does it mean to be white? Now, Neely Fuller Jr. has said, for white people, they have made practicing white supremacy, biting and chomping on niggras, they have made their purpose that their purpose for existence. If you take that away, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Mistreating niggers. That's our whole purpose, and that's why we go to the bottom of the ocean. That's why we go to the stars. What are we going to do? What is there to do in the universe if we can't... He continued. Oh, and that's when we got to Now You're Scared. We had one of it. Police dogs like vodka, I'm told, almost all have generations of specially trained animals behind them. What does that idiot have at the end of his program? It's what they're talking about, the hair and all that. He says, I can't help it. I'm a victim. I've been subject to 400 years of conditioning. My conditioning has been conditioned. Vodka, his conditioning has been conditioned. That's how well trained he's been. I keep saying it repeatedly in the book. It says untrained. Oh, yeah, now this is some nonsense. Both trained and their inbred atavistic capital of push-button hatred are improved. That is facilitated by environment with its automatic way of conditioning. Untrained dogs in black sections of the South will bark at whites just as in white neighborhoods they bark at blacks. Now pause right there, Romain Gary, suicide victim as well. Hold up there. You're a known liar. You're lying. I've lived in a whole lot of southern parts of the so-called United States. Virginia, Atlanta, Georgia, been down to visit Florida many times. I've been to Disney World. I've been to Alabama. I've been to New Orleans. I've been to Texas. I've been to Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. I've been all of those spots repeatedly, lived in some of them. I have never encountered a dog in a black part of town that yells, barks at white people. Never. I've never even heard of a such. A dog trained to bark at white people? It's owned by black... Where? Who? We need to get him on the program right now. You're lying, Gary, Romain Gary. That is not the case at all. I've seen dogs that just bark at everybody. That's what they do. Niggras, anybody. You walk by and they don't know you, they're going to bark. Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with that. And, unfortunately, I'm familiar with white dogs that white people have trained to attack black people. Yes, those two I'm familiar with. Now, you got to give me some evidence. That's the same thing I said, worst book ever, Dr. Layla Africa. You're not just going to tell me that you got black mothers who, because they eat a natural diet, they don't need diapers, and they can sense when their child has to go to the bathroom and not have a footnote or some evidence. No siree. Same thing here, Romain Gary. You're not going to tell me that black people in the South have dogs that are trained to hate white people or that instinctively bark at white people in the black part of town and have no evidence. You're in Beverly Hills, sir. Where's the evidence? I'll pause there. Like I said, I took lots. Oh, I didn't even get it on my notes. Disobeying his own reflexes. That's what Gene Seberg says about vodka. He's disobeying his own reflexes to not chomp on and mistreat a black person. Is that what it is for white people? Individuals classified as white? You practice racism so much at some point, it is a reflex to mistreat individuals who are not white. Whew. Stunning book, Romain Gary. Now, this is a liar. White people concluded this fellow's a liar. So got to keep that in mind as we roll through the book. And I said before, reading an author's book who, while we're going along in the book, is stopping to say, oh, I know you don't believe me. You think I'm lying about it. Like, that's just unusual. I'm not accustomed to reading books like that. But we will proceed. Now, people did exactly what I thought they would. They waited until it's time for the second audio segment. I'm going to do exactly what I told you. We're going to the second audio segment. Write a note. We'll see if we have time for folks to share once we get back from the second audio segment. We've been doing the book club for a while. They know the format. Audio segment to Romain Gary, White Dog, stunning read. I mean, wow. What does it mean to be white? Oh, my God. We haven't even got to... Woo! Second audio segment is amazing. Cowbells galore. Woo! Welsing moments, and Welsing moments. Context of White Supremacy audio segment 2. She told him rather sharply, "I can see you left him quite a souvenir." "Self-defense, ma'am," Keyes said quietly. "Yes, self-defense. It's always legitimate. You bet. But I really beat him up. What I call a real beating, only once. When I'd lost my head a little. I grant you that. He's used to me now, and that's all the trick there is. After 2 hours a day of seeing me there inside his cage with my padded clothes on, week after week, he just started to adjust. Period. He figured that he's got to live with it. Me. I mean, that's it. There to stay. That I'm here to stay. Yeah. Right here. And there's nothing he can do about it. Not a thing. He can't scare me away no longer. Neither of us can get rid of the other. I'm real happy to take care of the dog. I'll see him through." Later, much later, in the light of all that was to follow, I asked some of our friends who were a bit too quick in taxing us with impudence or naivete, what would you have done in our place? Word had gotten around, and people, often strangers, would phone Jean and tell her they would be happy to give the dog a home. Those offers were either cynically blunt about their reasons or too transparent in their whiteness. Most of our friends answered that in our place they would have taken Carruthers' advice and had the dog destroyed, for, as some of them put it, you have to draw a line somewhere, after all, even with sensitivity. I don't agree. It seems to me that there are too many lines drawn as it is. For the last 40 years, the escalation in the denunciation of sentimentalism coming from liberals, communists, and Nazis alike has not been particularly conspicuous in leading to a spring of reason. It has ended in Auschwitz, terrorism, and Prague. The world is more conspicuous for its brutish callousness than for its sentimentalism, and that so many liberal intellectuals choose this time to make of sentimentalism a kind of moral and intellectual sin is very curious indeed. There is no reason why we should be made to choose between Queen Victoria and Hitler or Stalin, but let us at least admit that oversensitivity and sentimentality is not exactly what threatens our civilization right now. And so I refuse to lower my sights where our dignity is concerned. I refuse to devaluate, to give in to inflation, to accept the notion that $100 worth of suffering is worth no more than $1 on today's market. In other words, that in terms of sensitivity, 100 dead are required today when one would have been enough yesterday before inflation set in and devaluation came. Jean was hesitating. I understand only too well this strange trait of character in people blessed or cursed with a generous nature. They're always eager to trust you and to prove it to you by giving you tokens of their trust. I cannot boast of a generous nature myself, since I never forgive anything and forget even less. Yet it happened that a crook was once successful in robbing me for one reason only. He looked every inch a crook. I felt the need to be forgiven for my unreasoned, purely physical, and almost racist antipathy, and I signed a contract with him. Now, of course, Keyes was saying, if you want to sell the mutt, you can get about $400 for him. He's not just an ordinary watchdog. He's a real son of a gun, an attack dog, the best I've ever come across. Yes, ma'am, he's the real thing. What, with the crime rate? You know all the white folks in L.A. are looking for one. Oh, come off it, Keyes. Don't give me that. I'm in this thing up to my neck, you know. he assumed a look of deep regard, even of respect. Jean was watching him rather beatedly, but there was not a trace of irony there, nothing but too much respect. "Oh, I know that. People like yourself and so many others have helped us a lot. People like Burt Lancaster, Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, Shirley MacLaine, the real American people." He was probably dying laughing behind that impassive facade, but it didn't show. The man behaved as if he had swallowed the whole world long, long ago, and not a ripple was left on the surface. Resentment and hatred have a dynamic power of their own. They can move mountains. That's how many a beautiful country has been built. Solid stuff. Foundations. Jean had made up her mind once more, as so often before, as always and forever. She showed herself true to her nature, which meant above all trusting human nature. Seberg is that kind of a Midwestern American, and there is just nothing you can do about it, no matter how long you lived in France with her. Okay, you can take the dog back if Jack is willing to have him. That's no problem. He can't handle the snakes without me. You always get bitten when milking them, and it takes years to get really immune. A hornet can bite me, my arm won't even swell. Yes, ma'am, there are only 2 other guys in the whole state of California who can say they're truly immune to venom. Butch Perkins in Santa Barbara and Jeff Kalinsky in San Diego. All the other so-called snakers, they'll just pass out if you throw a coral in their lap. Why is this dog so important to you? He shook his head and laughed. There you've got me. I've always liked animals, since I was a kid. That's why I chose this kind of work. I wanted to be a vet, but I dropped out of school in the 8th grade. Had to work. Well, I'll soon be in business for myself. There's not one real good kennel in the whole black community here. I feel they could do with more dogs, a lot more, and I'm a real pro with dogs. The best. Yes, ma'am, the best. If I can make it with your friend here, that'll prove it. Those things get around. All this must have been happening in a wonderful smell of roses. Whenever I leave Jean alone, I am immediately replaced by bouquets of roses. Dozens of them come to fill the void, all with visiting cards, and I have estimated at various times that my flower value is about a dozen roses per pound. It is flattering and very satisfying to know that as soon as you leave your gorgeous wife alone, an impressive number of people rush to the florists in the admirable hope of replacing with roses your sweet-smelling self. And Keys, I know one of your helpers tried to kill the dog. What if he tries again? Terry? That's over. He got the point. Smart kid. He's outside in the car. I'm giving him a lift home. Why don't you talk to him? The kid was leaning against the car, counting the light years up there in the sky. You don't have to worry, Miss Seberg. That was a crazy thing I did. It won't happen again, I promise you. Your dog is in good hands. And that was it. The next day, Jean took Botka back to the ranch. I would have done the same thing had I been there. During all the years I have lived in daily contact with Jean Seberg, I have regained from her some of that brave candor you need to win by losing. By which I mean that what matters above all, win or lose, is to keep your trust in people intact, for it is less important to be again and again disappointed, deceived, betrayed, and mocked at by them than to keep your faith and trust in them unshaken. It is less important to let, for many more centuries to come, all the beasts of prejudice, hate, and deceit quench their thirst at your expense than to let this sacred source dry up within you. It is less important to be a loser than to lose yourself. I was then somewhere between Phnom Penh and Angkor Wat. Chapter 6. 48 hours after my return to Paris, a Francois reporter called to tell me that Jean's brother David had been killed in a car accident. 18 years old. I catch the Chicago plane that same day to be with the Sebergs in Marshalltown, Iowa, in the heart of that Middle West, which is probably to America what a 1924 bottled Chateau Lafite is to French wine, when properly preserved in stable conditions in a good, quiet cellar. It is difficult to imagine more pleasant, friendly, and unpsychological people, by which I mean people who are sufficiently well-balanced, straightforward, and self-assured to spare you the kind of special handling required in dealing with the average neurotic personality of our time. But then, among the nice folks who come to express their sympathy to the stricken family, I begin to hear references to the other tragedy which is grieving the town. A lovely, well-brought-up girl from a much-respected family has married a Negro. The father died of shock. The mother is not much better off. And yet they are such nice, such wonderful people. Never a more decent family has been stricken by a more indecent blow. Fate, that goddamn foreigner, a Greek really, is really hitting below the belt, a notoriously dirty fighter. The fact that a mixed marriage between a white girl and a black man could be viewed as a tragedy of the same order as a young boy's tragic death instantly unleashes the sneering, teeth-bearing animal in me, all the intolerance of intolerance that is the curse of tolerance. I try to hold myself in check, but I am too old a dog now to be able to learn new tricks. So I let go, lash out, ashamed of myself, which makes me even more aggressive. I inform my audience that no one better than I can understand this racial tragedy, as I myself married an African niggras back in 1941 in the Ubangi. Yeah, a black girl, walking around naked, bare-breasted, and bare-assed, the greatest, the loveliest little ass that ever graced this earth, take it from a Frenchman. A dismayed silence falls upon my audience, a silence so thick you could cut it with a knife and take it home with you as a trophy. And I am almost telling the truth, except that if my black marriage did indeed take place on the bank of the Shari during the war, it had been celebrated under tribal customs and not under French law, and the father of Lucien had given me his daughter in exchange for a hunting knife, 50 yards of silk, and 5 jars of Dijon mustard. They listened to me, and I can almost feel their sympathy flowing toward my in-laws. They thought Jean Seberg had married a decent man. And so I sink in deeper and deeper. The son I had with my niggras is now a member of the French Communist Party. When some of my audience tries to flee, I utter the magic word de Gaulle to hold their interest. I am about to tell them that de Gaulle, as is well known, had a Negro great-grandfather on his Jewish grandmother's side, but a sudden feeling of hopelessness and gratuity and vanity overcomes me. You just can't play Groucho Marx with these people. They are too nice. This kind of backlash aggressive humor, to be understood, needs a common ground of common suffering or your nasty humor comes out as merely as nastiness. I get a hold on the clown in me while the youngest of the folks around me says, with a tolerant smile, "I'm afraid you can't really understand this. You don't have 20 million Negroes in France." True enough, but we have 50 million Frenchmen in France, and that ain't all fun either. I walk out ashamed of myself, feeling cut off once more from people by that terroristic sense of humor, so totally un-French, but that used to be so American. W.C. Fields, Chaplin, stealing from kitties, Mark Twain, O. Henry, and their last survivors from Will Rogers to the hungry eye, America no longer laughs at itself. It's getting smaller. That night I held in my arms my young wife, shaking with uncontrollable sobs, and her despair and sorrow were for me that personal reproach and accusation known to all men whose virility is first of all a need to protect, to defend, and to remedy. Never before, in all the frustrations I have known, has everything that makes me a man challenged with more savage and vain anger that thing we call destiny, for lack of a more ignoble word. That battle we are always losing without even being permitted to fight it. The fields around Marshalltown, caught between winter and spring, lay low and sultry. Nothing rises above the horizon, nothing stands out. There is an air of acceptance over the land. To sleep, perchance to dream, that kind of a place. It reminds me of Russia. Nothing there to fit a mood of rebellion, of protest, of brandished fists. It must not be easy to be a writer here, for it is quite obvious that when a writer talks of rebellion, he talks of literature. What else? There are almost no blacks here and hardly any Jews, so the little town knows no direct fear, and it is nice to be able to drive around and go everywhere without a leash. No need to keep a constant grip on yourself. Nice people, hospitality, no hate, no fear, quiet certitudes and faith. You could almost call it a happy place, if happiness can have 20,000 inhabitants and be content with that. We have almost no Negroes here, so the sexual malaise is non-existent, a doctor tells me, and adds, sexual fear, you know. Yes, I do, but I don't believe it. I am aware that psychiatric studies almost all point to sexual fear as an important factor in the white-black relationship, or lack of the same. The dimensional myth and the odd envy or hostility it breeds no doubt play a part in the white outlook. This noble legend, the solidly established dimensional superiority of the black, is one of the funniest things I have ever heard in my life, though in a country as size-conscious in everything as America, with its natural penchant for scope, records, greatness, measurements, and, generally speaking, a taste for the bigger-than-life in all things, this suspicious, sneaky, downright curiosity and worry concerning the proportions of the average black instrument makes sense both psychologically and socially. It is normal that for a nation that has built skyscrapers, size should be almost a status symbol. And if we remember that no other nation in the world is so virility conscious, with two phallic generations of writers from Hemingway to Philip Roth talking about erections in awed, proud, almost epic terms, as if of some kind of fantastic achievement, no wonder that this subversive, dangerously competitive, overwhelming, strikingly magnificent, record-breaking, they never quit reputation of the black man's magical wand is something to be reckoned with. as French Consul General in Los Angeles from 1956 to 1960, I had to write several reports on the racial situation in California for our embassy. Told repeatedly that this dimensional element played an important part in whites' prejudices, I asked a local public opinion institute to conduct a survey on the matter, and the institute polled some 120 Los Angeles call girls for me, white as well as black. The results were as astonishing as they were inconclusive. The majority of the white professionals answered affirmatively when asked, "In your experience, have you noticed that your black partner was bigger than your white partner?" But the majority of the black girls had noticed nothing special in blacks as opposed to whites. According to them, the thing varied with the individual. Our ambassador in Washington at that time was Monsieur C.O.W.S. de Merville, and he is a man who likes clear, precise reports, but I was unable to provide him with anything very definite on this subject. The most heartwarming answer was given by a young woman I later asked to meet. Her answer to the down-to-earth question was, "It isn't the quantity, it's the quality that counts. And there's such a thing as feelings." Underlined. The first part of the answer could be put down to the professional pride of the craftsman who likes to do a good job, but the phrase, "and there's such a thing as feelings," enchanted me. I wondered if I had at last met the woman of my life. Although the poll service tried to wriggle out of it, I got her name and invited her to dinner at Romanov's. She was a pretty girl, about 23. She spent her free time studying literature at UCLA, since there is nothing more satisfying for an intellectual than to meet a whore who is studying at the Sorbonne or its Californian equivalent. I truly felt the wind of grace over my brow. We were only at the hors d'oeuvres when we began to talk poetry, and when dessert came, the word existentialism was uttered. American whores are 20 years behind. In France, they would have been talking structuralism and Michael Foucault. I did not ask the girl why she followed this profession. As a writer, I couldn't afford to sound so bourgeois. I did cool off a bit when I learned that she was married and the mother of a little girl of 5. Her husband, he has since become a television producer in New York, and this is the God's truth, drove her around in his taxi from customer to customer. I remember that a deep depression came over me. It wasn't the moral question that was getting me down, but the feeling that I was getting old and no longer up to it. I was definitely knocked out when I discovered that this girl, who did about 10 customers a day, neither smoked nor drank coffee. She was a Mormon and wasn't allowed coffee or tobacco. Holy Moses! I have since asked a friend, Professor Goldberg, why, in his opinion, about 89% of the white girls had asserted that blacks were bigger, and why their black sisters had answered in about the same proportion that there were no real dimensional differences between the two races. According to this eminent psychoanalyst, the black girls had wanted to reassure the white man about his bigness out of fear, while the white girls had tried to make their man feel small out of bitterness. I doubt it, but the fact remains that I have been unable to clear this point for Monsieur C.O.W.S. de Merville, who, I hasten to add, had never asked me for this bit of information. This dimensional obsession in America, especially in writers, is a constant source of amazement to me. From Mailer to James Jones, from Faulkner to Hemingway, and to Philip Roth, this preoccupation of the American intellectual primate with his banana is so persistent, vocal, and repetitious that in the end it amounts to a gigantic, general, ever-threatening castration. The most pathetic example can be found in the story Hemingway tells about Scott Fitzgerald. it seems that Fitzgerald was tortured by the idea that he was small. Hemingway conducted an expertise and assured his insecure friend that he was perfectly all right. To prove this beyond any doubt, he dragged Fitzgerald to the Louvre to show him the phallic dimensions of the Greek statues. How could two adults, two of the most famous writers of their time, arrive at such nonsense? What deep anguish does this American phallic fallacy hide? I have never come across this dimensional obsession in any other country, and as the Reverend Father Churell has pointed out so properly, did Hemingway himself ignore the elementary fact that the measurements at ease don't mean a thing. In Father Churell's words, the only thing that counts in this field is the noble heights to which inspiration can carry you. Or should we consider this idée fixe as one more example of American perfectionism, where gadgets are concerned, their keen interest in the latest and most powerful model? I fear, however, that the reason goes much deeper. Almost every citizen of this most advanced technological society feels trapped in the complexities of a universe which, as an individual, he can no longer control. He has become a kind of insert one coin, manipulated by a push-button distributing machine, the button receding farther and farther away from his reach, while the automatic, implacable, and anonymous gears of bureaucracy become more and more authoritarian, irresistible, final, and crushing. This human insert one token is channeled through the prefabricated circuits of an artificial existence. No wonder he so desperately endeavors to emphasize whatever trace of life force is left in him. The viralized, powerless to assert himself, a mere thing, transmitted through channels, used and then eliminated at the other end into retirement and the cemetery, the man of crosswalk signs and of the bureaucracy of living sees no other way of asserting his power except by erection, and he sticks his virility under your nose as a proof of his existence. This phallic proclamation is really what the American Declaration of Independence is coming to. Pornography, so prevalent on stage and screen, with testicles brandished like defiant fists, has become the last stand of nature, a nostalgia for a more natural life and a more natural environment, a dream of wilderness. It is the wretched self-defense of a man who, in all senses of the term, whether ideological, philosophical, or moral, is fighting the threat of castration. The phallic declaration is a sign of confusion, anxiety, a dream of nature. When nothing else is certain anymore, with all the values crumbling, orgasm becomes the only thing they can't take away from us. One thing is certain anyhow, the American dream is in danger of becoming a prick. In a psychological contest such as this, the black giant of the track, football, and baseball fields, the African, only 1 century removed from the jungle, the tiger, the panther, becomes a symbol of virility to be envied and therefore fear and hatred. The phallic declaration is yet another clue to what is probably our most persistent, oldest myth, the myth of the return to the source, with its eternal echo of Paradise Lost, as the signs of our intellect's failure to cope, solve, transcend, and prevail become more and more evident and distressing. Orgasm becomes a kind of ersatz solution, the instant coffee of self-fulfillment, the only satisfying answer, something that truly makes sense in a senseless world. You have only to study present-day American literature to conclude that it reads as if all the Philip Roths, Norman Mailers, and so many other talented writers were constantly amazed at still being able to achieve an erection, whispering in the dark, "Look, Ma, no hands." that will wrap us for this week. So we will be back next Thursday. We'll be on Chapter 7. Just concluded Chapter 6. 7 for next Thursday. We are making good progress with the text. Let's see, this put us about a third of the way into the text, seems. About a third of the way. Maybe 4 more sessions to go, looking like. Somewhere around there. Maybe a little bit more. Have to see. 4, maybe 5. Number again. New number again. Let's see. 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Make sure we get our investor his last couple thoughts in from this week, and then we'll get folks who dialed in. Hopefully they'll have a thought, or we'll see if they do or not. Maybe it's just myself and a few others who think this is fascinating read. Let's see. Our investor wrote in his additional commentary. Number 5. Chapter 5 had several interesting passages. You can't always go on piously blaming everything on society. There are times when you're a louse on your own. Next quote, I felt the need to be forgiven for my unreasoned, purely physical, and almost racist antipathy and signed a contract with him. I concluded that the author, in trying to rationalize his contempt for Keyes, revealed that his true feelings were steeped in racism. I would agree. Number 6, Chapter 6. This chapter was filled with welsing moments and the fear of genetic annihilation. A few excerpts. The fact that a marriage between a white girl and a black man could be viewed as a tragedy, tragic arrangement, of the same order as a young boy's tragic death. I'm afraid you can't really understand this. You don't have 20 million Negroes. We have almost no Negroes here, so the sexual fear, And finally, the convoluted discussion on the phallus size. The end of the chapter devolved and became incoherent for me. I wanted it to get back to White Dog, not all of this about the penis. In fact, this whole chapter, we started off, he gets a telegram, Gene Seberg's brother died. Oh, wow. And we get from there to probable sundown town, equal tragedy, white girl marries black boy, Negro penis. And that's the chapter. I mean, what? What is going on? The editor. Anyway, let's see if folks have any commentary. Our listeners, I know we did get dropped from the stream serve while we were broadcasting. Not sure what the deal was. Internet connection has been a little odd today, but hopefully will not continue. We'll be straight for the rest of the programs for the week, and the archive should be pristine. Let's see. Folks, we missed totally Miss C, non-Clemson grad with us. I'll check Silent Warrior as well.
Hello, can I be heard?
Non-Clemson grad, yes, sir.
Well, so let's see. My wife and I, we watched the movie earlier today to prepare for this evening's broadcast. And like you said, the movie is completely different from the book. So, for example, when before you started reading the second time around, when you were talking about Mr. Carruthers, at least the way it's portrayed in the movies, Mr. Carruthers and Keyes are simply people who work together to, deal with animals and stuff like that. But it's a completely different relationship inside of the book. At least inside the book, Keyes is a, completely autonomous black man who just simply does what he wants when he wants. As opposed to the movie Keyes and Carruthers, they work together. They're friends. They're family. They eat dinner and stuff like that inside the movie. Let's see. I'll start with. You said so many things just back in before the second part reading. So like he liked you just read from the person who was writing in the fact that the white girl married a Negro, all types of cowbells and how the family reacted to it. My response to that is just a whole bunch of white tears and tears. Another part was married a black. The fact that the narrator married a black negress and had a mulatto son who joined the Communist Legion. Back when this would have happened would have been during the whole McCarthy scare, so I found that to be very interesting as well too. Another thing was the people, and I was saying to the person that he didn't understand what it's like to have 20 million Negroes in France, juxtaposed to admission that there's almost no Negroes or Jews in the part of the area where they are in Iowa. So how are you worried about something that you never see? This country is about, as far as the U.S. census is concerned, about 13% black. But there are plenty of white people, a good amount of them, who can go an entire lifetime without really seeing a black person, especially when you live outside the South. And when you start getting to, places in the Midwest and the mountain towns, you only really ever see black people on TV. So, why would they be so scared of black people where chances are they've never even seen one? Let's see. I'm aware that a psychiatrist studies all points to sexual fears as an important factor in the white-black relationship or the lack of the same. Right towards the end of the reading, talk about that fear, that everything that is happening inside of this system, he clearly admits it is completely driven by the idea of, white genetic annihilation, at least as far as I was concerned. I was going to be careful of my notes, not go too far, because June ended up in chapter 5, and we may read a little bit further than that.
We got to chapter 6, into chapter 6.
Oh, okay. Chapter 7. Describing the black male penis like skyscrapers and imaginable want to be reckoned with. By the time me and my wife were done reading chapter 6 and chapter 7, we felt like those two chapters alone could have been chapters in the book Delectable Negro. Particularly, for example, Delectable Negro, when it talks about the idea when white men were having problems, getting an erection to have sex with their wives. Apparently, there must be something wrong with their wives, so they take them to go see how the doctors treat the wives, even though there's something really wrong with the male, at least in those stories. And, some white men can only have sex with their wives after the wives were literally anesthetized. More Delectable Negro stuff right there. Let's see. The narrator meets with a woman who studies literature at UCLA who is married, whose husband drives you around to have sex with other people. I think I forgot what the word for that is. Maybe it's not cuckolding, but shared wife stuff. Like it reminds. Well, it's not as extreme as when a white couple they see got a black couple to join in their sex and stuff like that. But I don't think it's too far from that. But I do think it interesting that this person was thought to still be a worthy human being. Even though she was going around having sex with multiple people, she was still getting her education. Juxtapose this, how black women are spoken about, because black women, they have sex out of wedlock and stuff like that. They're not getting an education, all the derogatory things that, defame black women. But, here's black woman, she's going around having sex with 10 different people a day, but, she's still respectable. Let's see, at one point, when, the boy Terry comes in, I think he's 18 years old. There's a comment that has the talk about him being smelling like a dog. Has anyone heard the joke before that white people smell like dogs? Personally, I've never felt that, but I do find the joke to be a funny one nevertheless. And then let's see, on page 61, four-legged white American. Though black people live in America, they are hardly really ever seen as American, especially when the political season comes out. Politicians like saying the phrase hard-working Americans, which means white. But in this case, we have the phrasing of four-legged white American. white dogs, or at least dogs in general, are given the distinction or the glory of being worthy of being an American. And not to go too far into chapter 7, let's see, while watching the movie, there was a part when, the woman first, after she got the dog, took care of it, it escaped, and then went doing what it did during the night. She's going around looking for the dog. There was a scene that was a little funny, at least to me, was like when she was looking for the dog, by the time, the van pulls off and her dog's not in it, I always noticed all the different people inside the movie that were just non-white. I think I saw a couple of Asian people, even saw a couple of black people. I even saw what I thought to be a blind black man because he had a walking stick. He was blind, and I personally couldn't help but to think back to, Sneak Meeting in the Boondocks. Not to say that the man in the movie was acting that way. Let's see. After white dog killed the Negro, white female was willing to kill the dog, becoming the voice of reason. So this happened in the book as well too. But the white woman, at least in the movie, she was concerned with saving the dog, and that the dog's behavior is not the dog's fault, but it's the fault of the white people who taught the dog to be racist. And so eventually, the dog actually killed another black person in the movie. Then she changed her mind, like, oh my God, the dog needs to put it down. And as opposed to Keys in the movie, who wants to keep the dog alive, and now making it seem like, that white liberal, myth that, white people are not reasonable, know how to make the correct decision. Let's see. And then I'm not particularly sure about how this book ends. My wife and I have not gotten that far. I think it's very interesting by the end of the movie, they shoot the dog. And turns out you can't cure racism. And I think that gets into the idea that racism is not something that people should necessarily be trying to cure. At the very least, you should be trying to defend yourself against it, counter it, and of course, sometimes if it's necessary, sometimes somebody might have to die. And I believe, I just said somebody might have to die. I believe that particular line is what got Tommy Curry in trouble a couple of years ago too. And then I'll pass it on to my wife.
Okay. Good evening, COWS listeners. This is Miss Blue, and I just have a couple comments. So about the woman, the wife, who was, I guess, getting pimped out by her husband. It says she didn't smoke or drink coffee, and I think that would be code for sex with non-white black men. She was a Mormon, and historically, Mormons have hated black people and consider them non-humans. And then one thing that was really confusing, just reading the book, was the author. He interchanges the names of the characters, like Jack, he'll call him Jack, or Carruthers, or Jack Carruthers. He'll call his wife Jean, Jeannie, Seberg, Miss Seberg, Jean Seberg. So if you're not paying attention, you may not be able to figure out who he's talking about. And then even the dog has its own list of names, like White Dog or Vodka, and then Little Father. But for Keys, the black man, it's just Keys. And this book talks a lot about the concepts or the tenets of modernism, and it talks about, like, not feeling connected with yourself and feeling a sense of detachment or alienation. And that's the book, the author mentioned, this is one of the biggest problems of modern society, is feeling like you're alienated. And it talks about, in these couple chapters, it talks about how classic literature that a lot of people have elevated as some of the greatest writings of all time, typically by white people or white men. A lot of that, is talking about erections, sexuality, phallus symbols, and some of the authors or the contributors to modernity would be like Franz Kafka with Metamorphosis and Freud. And if you study the father of psychology, it will talk a lot about symbols and some of the symbols in your dreams and like interpreting dreams, and a lot of the symbols like staircases or your relationship with your mother. Everything eventually boils down somehow, some way to sexuality and penises and like having an attraction for your parents. Or another tenet of modernity is like the fear or the hatred of paleness or white skin. And in the Metamorphosis book, it talks about like transhumanism. Like at one point, it's this young man. At the beginning of the novel, he's a human, and by the end, he turns into a cockroach. And how I connect that to this book, which is talking about modernism, is the author, he's a white man, and somehow he projects himself onto this white dog. So we talked about this last week. He I guess projects, I forget the word, reflexive understanding of himself and this dog. So I guess the last thing I would like to say is when the author is talking to the white dog, he says, it's not that I don't want you to bite black people, I just don't want you to bite only black people. And that kind of speaks to how the movie itself ends. Because the movie itself, the white dog doesn't end up biting Keys or the white woman, but ends up attacking the white man. And the moment it attacks the white man, the dog is dead. So I will end my commentary.
Much obliged, Miss C. Mitt Romney. Like, how dare you come on here and talk bad about Mormons? That is true. They wouldn't even... Long history, that's a whole nother program, but long history of that out in Utah and wherever they practice. Poor Mitt Romney. That is an interesting point, if that is a code. When they were talking about the white whore in California who didn't drink coffee. What's that code for she didn't take Negro clients? Have to think about that one. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in. Any other thoughts? Folks want to make sure. Oh, check in. So now in Norway, the sun is almost up. It is, let's see, so it's like 4:44 a.m. Norway time. Oof. I would not be awake to talk about a racist pooch at that hour. Let's see. Silent Warrior, any thoughts you wanted to get in? Second installment.
Can you hear me?
Crystal clear.
Perfect. Thank you. In the previous session, I had repeatedly tried to put myself on the list, but it seems that it didn't get through. So I had some comments I wanted to share. With the first reading, I hope I can share really quickly now. You asked, why is it that they are talking about now they are scared? What does the author mean by he said that white people aren't really scared of white people, and in the book the author and Jean has the black people inside their home. But when I look at that, I think this must be referring to the subconscious fear of white genetic annihilation, and the author is using that to make a signal to his white readers that this black man is about some white genetic annihilation. And in fact, the whole scene where Keys comes to their home and the dog is restrained. So you have Keys and a white woman in the kitchen. This is exactly what the dog is supposed to be about, preventing. that combination. So I thought that was, and the fact that Keith is saying that in the kitchen when the dog is supposed to be attacking him to prevent white genetic annihilation. I thought that was fascinating. In general, I think this is an excellent book. I mean, I think this book should be promoted every time we tell people about Dr. Wilson's work on the ISIS papers, because it is so rich with symbolism. And I think I can see why the script for the movie was so drastically changed, because if they put all of this detail, or even if they represented just one chapter really well in the movie, it could really reveal racism to non-white people. There's a discussion about the white grandfather whose son wanted to make, who after his retirement wanted to make some money by opening a kennel to help the police. That's why he's making money by practicing racism. They don't just practice the racism, but they make money out of it. In the meanwhile, the black revolutionaries are con men. But they're not. The most they're trying to do is get some money to support a children's school. They're not getting money to find ways to get a legitimate job where they can harm white people. So the contrast was very strong for me there. How much domination is in the system of white supremacy. Black tears gone white. That looked like a psychological inversion. I think you say that because you really mean to say white, something white turning black. And so that was another Wilson moment. Destiny, that battle we are always losing without even being permitted to fight. That sounded like a reference to white genetic annihilation. There are a few more examples of destiny that the author talks about in the book. No direct fear in the town, and Wilson talks about the discomfort that white people have when living together with non-white people. So that's, Wilson all day. And the penis discussion, I thought it was very interesting because it's quite possible. It was so close to giving away the best theory for confrontation. But you saw this displacement discussion that is about, okay, you have a black boy married to a white girl, so you're going to have non-white children. And that's the reason why the father died, out of shock. Instead, the discussion goes from genetic annihilation and it's displaced to penis size. And then in the reporting from what the prostitute, where there's a lot of instances where he's talking about whores in the book, but in this one instance it really stood out how this was a lady. And this person says it's not about the quantity, it's the quality. Quality? Is that a reference to the genes being dominant? And then immediately after that, the author says, the phrase, he keeps talking, the author does not make any reference to quality, and he talks about her being a professional and who likes to do a good job. But and that when she is talking about quality, he's making it sound like when she says quality, she's talking about herself and that she wants to do a good job, and not the fact that instead of quantity or size of penis, there's quality of the penis or quality of the genes that make the penis. So that I thought that was a very good example of not going to reveal this, can't reveal it subconsciously or consciously, can't. So I thought that was, for me, that was very revealing. There's a mention of black people as gadgets, and I thought that was a new Wilson moment for me because it speaks to creating tools that emulate the function of black people or black men. Testicles brandished as a black fist. Wilson talked about that with boxing. The training methods debate with Keys and Caruthers was very interesting. And then castrated on page 79, where they say, I think it's where he talks about an individual in the bureaucracy being castrated. And I think he's referring to white people feeling powerless compared to the white supremacy government, where they have less control. So even in reference to other white people, this white person still comes back to this fundamental inadequacy that they have. So this reminds me of like Republicans or people with guns in the South that say you can't force us to put on masks. There's some comments about how the dog was killed and so on, and I read on Wikipedia that NAACP boycotted the film and so on, and I need to do some reading about that. But this is a really good book, Gus. And I can also see why it's so expensive and hard to get. Because if more people read this book, I mean, it's quite revealing. I think it reminds me of a book called Black Like Me, which I read as like 12 or 13 years old, and that really opened my eye up to the fact that white people don't. Black like me is a white man who takes some drugs to make his skin get darker, and then as a black child I saw that and I said, wait a minute, that he's not, he doesn't accept the way he's being treated as a black person.
30 seconds.
I understood then what was racism. And for me, this book, White Dog, is close to its ability to reveal what racism is and how white people feel, as that book, Black Like Me, by James Griffith. And I meet my line. Thanks for the time.
Much obliged, Silent Warrior, our caller in Norway, almost 5 a.m. to discuss White Dog. Sid, I wish we had discussed this when Dr. Welsing was still with us, because she might have read the book or seen it. She easily could have seen the film. I think the movie got, quite a bit of attention, and NAACP protested about it, so it would not have surprised me if she at least knew about it, one element, the book, film, some component of it. But yeah, I would have loved to hear her thoughts on the work. Oh well, at least we can study and share a thought or two. I will say, a lot of the symbolism, not all, but it's based on the same book. A lot of that symbolism is in the movie. And as you stated, the NAACP boycotted the film. The movie's still available. You can watch it and they'll show Key's character and they'll focus on Keys on the sign above head, and they have a few scenes where the white dog is trampling a male's genitals. Like, a lot of the symbolism is still there. And when you don't understand racism, white supremacy, Mr. Fuller says most of the times we are looking at things, but we do not see what we're looking at. Very sad. Hopefully this is an effort to correct all that. Let's see. I'll see if I have a few notes before we wrap up last few minutes. So I believe, now one, I've looked, I think there are multiple different endings to this book, depending on which version you have. I think now, this book was published in French originally. I think there's one French edition. Obviously, we're reading the transcription. I think there might be multiple translations to English. And I think there might even be like different endings for the English version. I think The first version came out, then there's another. I think the dog lives in all of the text versions of the book. Now, they are different. Some, I guess, are a little happier than the others, depending on your perspective. But I think the dog survives in all of the text versions. He does not in the movie. But we'll have to see. He's alluding. See, I know some things that do happen that are different from the movie, but I don't want to share because I feel like that's going ahead. But he's like alluding to things that are going to happen later. The author, when he says things like later, much later, in light of all that was to follow, I asked some of our friends who were a bit too quick in taxing us with imprudence or naivete, what would you have done in our place? In terms of about the dog. And he said most of them would have put it down. I thought it was more interesting. He says, word had gotten around and people, often strangers, would phone Jean and tell her they would be happy to give the dog a home. Those offers were either cynically blunt about their reasons or too transparent in their whiteness. What does it mean to be white? If I'm reading this paragraph correctly, are you saying, Romain Gary, that some white people found out you had a nigger-hating dog? I said, oh, my Lord, we need to get can we get that pooch? You don't need that hound, do you? We just love him. He sounds wonderful. We heard all it, because he said some of them were right blunt about it. Do you still have that nigger-hating pooch? Because we'll take him off your hands. We hate niggers, and if you got a dog that hate that match in heaven. I mean, what does it mean to be white? I don't even think most victims of racism understand that that's the world we live in. Not just that there are generations of dogs trained by individuals classified as white to terrorize and kill black people, but that white people, apparently lots of white people, just hearing that such a pet exists would be excited to own that dog. What does it mean to be white? Continuing. He said, I thought it was fascinating. He says, yet it happened that a crook was once successful in robbing me for one reason only. He looked every inch a crook. I felt the need to be forgiven for my unreasoned, purely physical, and almost racist antipathy. So this was a non-white person? And you just immediately, oh, this is a criminal. You're crook. Oh, yeah. I don't want nothing to do with this fella. And it's, oh, man, I'm being racist. Let me go ahead and do the contract. Then I don't know. Romain Gary, you are a known con man, talking about people being a crook. Like, get out of here. Let's see. Real American people. That's Keys is from talking to Gene Seberg about Burt Lancaster. And he's in a lot of movies. Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, Godfather again. Chapter 6. Sundown Towns. We read that. James Lowen. This reminded me so much of the way he talks about Crucian salts, where he's talking about this racist town, sundown town, where they probably had the sign, no niggers after sundown and all of that, where that's violence. Remember how he talked about they would have white children who would go out and terrorize black people if they stumbled into that. Get out of here, nigger, get out. They probably have the white dog with I will bite you to death. But this is the system of white supremacy. It's not that they're nice and lovely and all that. This is white terrorism. That is why there are no black people in Marshalltown, Iowa, the same way that this white grandfather has trained this little terrorist canine. But he says, oh, he's such a loving white grandfather, and he's so great with the children. Just the best thing ever. And then he's talking about this town. It's difficult to imagine more pleasant, friendly, and unpsychological people. Sufficiently well-balanced, straightforward, and self-assured. And yet, as opposed to we're mourning the loss of a young man, the prime of his life, who's about to be free, white, and 21. Oh, my God, a white woman is married a Negro. What are we going to do? He talks about these racist white people better than he does black people. All of the black people that we've heard in the book so far. And he says, a lovely, well-brought-up girl from a much-respected family, meaning she should have known better, not ignorant about racism. Of course, he's had sex with a black female, cowbell. He said, I'm almost telling the truth. That's curious phrasing. I don't often, if ever, hear that phrasing. I am almost telling the truth. How do you almost tell the truth? Either it's true or it's not. Are you pregnant? See if I can almost tell the truth. Am I? What? Continuing. Let's see. There are no blacks here. Just reminds me of the blacks. The blacks. He says, because there are no blacks here, he says there's no direct fear, and it's nice to be able to drive around and go everywhere without a leash. Now, I was originally thinking, oh, he means white dog, but the dog's not with them, with keys. So who's he talking about? Oh, he means himself, because he talked about that before. No need to keep a constant grip on yourself. Nice people, hospitality, no hate, no fear. Well, wait a minute. That's not true, because this is a sundown town. Sexual fear. Yeah, all the penis. Man, would have been great to read this. Dr. Welsing was still with us, man. Michael Foucault has come up in our book club before, noted French author, I believe, in our biography on Paul Robeson, but I could be wrong. Yeah, we'll get to the rest next week. Delectable Negro. Lots to peruse. I told you I just had a black female. She said, I'm trying to get serious and learn about racism. You seem like you should have some details. What book should I read? I said, White Dog. I didn't say, I didn't get to the ISIS papers first, although I did say that. Mr. Fuller's The Code book, although I did say that. There's tons of books. Urugu, Medical Apartheid, there's tons of books. You know, we could have mentioned White Dog. White Dog. Whew. Did you know they train dogs to chomp on? Crazy. I'm just going to keep plugging in for context. So let's see. This week we had Muhammad Ali, When We Were Kings. Them talking about in Zaire they trained dogs to chomp on black people. Last week we had Training Day, deleted scenes, Denzel Washington. He talks about his first day. They saw a dog was being trained to hate black people, beaten by a black male. This is a part of the process of the training. Seasoning, maybe. Next week, I think it'll be The Spook Who Sat by the Door. We read that one, so it's got to be in the memory banks. Yep, for me, it's right there. They have a key scene when the so-called riot is about to start, and a part of the escalation, the white officers come. And that came out at the same time as this book, like they are contemporaries. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, the late Sam Greenlee, Romain Gary, White Dog. Wow. Anyway, but the key scene towards the climax, so they kill a black male, George Floyd, insert name. They kill a black male, black people are upset, the police come in and they bring the dogs, and they have a really dramatic scene. It's probably German Shepherd like this one, and the black people are upset, and I believe one of the black officers comes and says, what are you doing with those dogs? You know how these people feel about those dogs? What are you doing? And they finally take them out, and the black people are upset. Or they scoff at first because there's a bunch of white people with the dogs. I'm like, get out of here. You're a coon, too. Get out of here. And so he pulls out his gun. He says, you get him out right now, I'll shoot him. And then they leave, and they still, once they leave, they still complain. Like, man, we had it. They brought those dogs in. They know how you feel about it. Don't good. So that's next week. I can just keep that alone. For anybody, because I'm sure it's got to be at least one person like, this is some crazy piece of fiction, and this isn't even real. You got this white liar, Gary dude, who made up all this stuff about some dog chomping on black. Okay. Again, this book is listed as a memoir. It's not listed under fiction. You have a lot of cultural reference points that would suggest that this is not a fairy tale. This is the system of white supremacy. Racist dogs. We'll be here tomorrow for Workplace Racism. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Wow. What a year. Lots more to come with codification. We'll be here Saturday. Compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Catch up on news, observations, the virus, the gun violence. Lots of dangers this year. Much obliged for all the folks who tuned in. If you want a copy of the book, I finally have the whole thing. It was pointed out, this book is expensive. That should be kept in mind as we proceed. This book is like $800 on Amazon. You might have to pay $300, $800 to get a copy, even on many other websites. I've seen it listed for really high amount, like almost approaching the amount you could buy a car for the amount of money that this book costs. Wow. Why is that? Just something to ponder. Much obliged for the folks' participation. Hope it was worthy of your Thursday evening. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy, particularly this year. We want our wits so we can be paying attention to what is happening, making maybe life-saving decisions. In addition to being sober, let's be buckled up if we are leaving. I wrote yesterday, they are drag racing up and down the street where I live, and I'm in residential areas, not a highway. 25 miles an hour. We're very close to a school, very residential area, and drag racing, because they've been saying that nationally, you've had a lot less traffic on the road, so some morons have taken advantage. I'll go out and drive 100 miles an hour on the road since nobody's out here. Lots of that. Lots of reasons. Armed white people, the Rona. A lot of good reasons to stay in the house worldwide. Well, I guess they don't have all the armed white people in other parts of the world, so maybe you don't have that reason in Norway. But here in the States, for sure, you got a lot of reasons to stay in the house. If you are going to go out, you are sober, you are buckled, you are extremely alert to your surroundings. If it looks like any white people are getting hostile, that this could be dangerous, this excursion is done. Everything is about safety. Right now, we are not getting into any skirmishes, arguments, feuds with white people out in public. Assume they are armed. You could die in the next 30 seconds. All of that said, if you're driving, got to go out, sober, buckled. If you're behind the wheel, you are not on the phone. Just making sure we, number one, are paying attention. Number two, doing everything we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. C.O.W.S signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.